Meeting of the Falls Township Board of Supervisors at 7:05. We'll begin with a salute to the flag, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Mrs. Pullen, call the roll, please.
Mr. Sopka?
Here.
Mrs. Wisłowski? Here. Mr. Harvey?
Here.
Mr. Dents?
Here.
Mr. Snipes?
Hey, good evening. I was notified Mr. Snipes was coming to the meeting. He was leaving Philadelphia earlier, and he's caught in some pretty bad traffic on 95, but he is on his way, so he'll be joining us at some point. I want to begin our meeting with, unfortunately, on a sad note. Recently, the township lost two people, one a previous employee, one a longtime volunteer in the township. And I just want to read a little bit about the two gentlemen and also ask for a moment of silence for them. We'll begin with a gentleman named Jerry Graham. Jerry was a former township park security officer, passed away a couple of weeks ago. He was the head supervisor for the Falls Township Park Security for 8 years. In addition, Jerry served as a detective in the Philadelphia Police Department for 23 years and was later a special agent with the PA Attorney's Office for 20 years. As Bill Reese says, Jerry Graham was a great person. He's a wonderful friend, and he'll be deeply missed. People, I think, who went to the park, probably ran into Jerry at some point as he was doing his different patrols, and I remember running into him quite a few times. He was a very, very nice guy, very good guy. So our sympathies go out to his family and friends. Another loss, Nevin Rovenalt. Mr. Rovenalt was a longtime member of our Environmental Advisory Council. Was a veteran of the U.S. Navy, a Vietnam veteran, and for, let's see, I was trying to see, looking at his obituary here, for a couple of decades was a member of the American Legion post in Fallsington. If you didn't necessarily know Rovenalt, you certainly knew something that he did, which was at his responsibility, something he enjoyed tremendously and did very well. He organized and ran the Memorial Day Parade every year in Falls Township that runs from Pennsbury High School to the Memorial Park in Fallsington. It was his baby. He every year did a fantastic job getting people together, organizing the parade, getting speakers and organizing all the official things that happen. The American Legion carries out the various official ceremonies honoring those who gave the ultimate sacrifice, and he is with those brave men and women now, and obviously and for his family and his friends and people that knew him, thoughts and prayers go out to him as well. And Memorial Day Parade, I'm presuming, will go on, and obviously in his memory in a couple of weeks. And so at this time, I'd like to ask everyone for a moment of silence for Jerry Graham and for Nevin Rovenalt. Okay, thank you very much. All right, this weekend, the township is going to play host to, for the first time, to a unique event, and it's an honor to have it here. I'm going to ask Mr. Dents, who has done a tremendous amount of work on this, to talk a little bit about the event and also introduce some guests we have who are going to be speaking about it. Mr. Dents?
Sure. Last year at the Falls Family Festival, we hosted a backyard barbecue, which many of you may have seen, where we had a competition. Local people came and barbecued their food, and we judged it. After the event, my good friend Tom Christine called me and said, we should do something bigger. They've done a state championship barbecue in different parts of the area. They used to do it at Shady Brook Farm. It didn't work out there. They were looking for a new place to do it. So he said, let's do something with a cause and to benefit the Liberty USO of the Delaware Valley, which is a great cause. So with the two of us, we've worked hard over the past year with a lot of people to organize this event that we called Q for the Troops. It's going to be a 2-day event in the Township Park, Saturday and Sunday. Both days we're going to have a car show both days. There'll be a craft fair both days, rides for the kids, live music. It's going to be a really good time, and it's for a really good cause. And Tom's here with a friend from the USO that's going to tell us about his organization, and Tom will talk a little bit more about the event.
Hey, good evening. Like Jeff said, I'm a friend of his. I'm actually, I own a barbecue business down in Bensalem. It's called Smoking Dudes. And Jeff found me through the barbecue contest. I was running a contest. He happened to be one of our team members at the time as a backyard guy. And that's how we became friends. I organize barbecue shows like what we're going to do here in your township. And happened to be talking to my friend John, who happens to be my chiropractor. And I told him about it, and he says, you know, we're looking for stuff like this with the USO to get involved with. I said, well, let me tell you something. We're looking for somebody to give the money to. I said, when we do these are nonprofit and we like to have a cause, I think this would be a great one. So I brought it up to Jeff. He says, it's a great idea. So I went to John. I said, John, I think we can make this happen. Well, you guys need to hear this guy's story. John is he's a volunteer. He's a chiropractor, but he's a volunteer with the USO, and he's been really, really involved. Let him come up and tell you his story. You guys are going to enjoy this.
I'd like to start off with thanking you for giving me this opportunity. Those of you that have as much gray hair as I got probably remember the Bob Hope Christmas shows from Vietnam and prior to that. Okay, there wasn't a holiday season unless he was somewhere entertaining our troops, and it was usually in the hottest combat zone in the world. Right? Well, Bob's been gone for quite a while, and things were pretty quiet, so nobody heard a whole lot about the USO until Operation Iraqi Freedom and Desert Storm, Operation Enduring Freedom. We're a very busy organization, but in order to fully understand the organization, you have to understand the structure of it. You have World USO, or just plain USO, and they take care, they're our umbrella group. Now, the rest of the USO units around the United States are set up like franchises. We receive no funding from the federal government. We are a 501c3 charity, and all the individual USOs are responsible for their own funding. Now, the funding that's raised locally stays locally, and that's particularly important for the job that we're doing here in what we refer to as USO of Pennsylvania and Southern New Jersey, or more lovingly referred to as Liberty USO. We cover all the state of Pennsylvania and half of New Jersey from Princeton on down. We're one of the busier USO units in the country, and I'd like to describe some of the programs that we have that are so necessary and in particular right now so very vitally important. Now, we're most noted for our entertainers that go around the world entertaining the troops, and they're doing a phenomenal job, but they come under the heading of USO or World USO. Here at Liberty, we maintain our central offices at International Airport Terminal A East. We also maintain a lounge and duty station down there 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, staffed by our volunteers. We have a duty station at Willow Grove Naval Air or Joint Training Base, which is in the process of downsizing considerably. We maintain a duty station at Fort Indiantown Gap, and where I work over at what's now known as Joint Base McGuire-Dix Lakehurst. Now, I'd like to take a time for everybody to understand, we receive absolutely no funding from the federal or local governments. Everything that we have to raise individually, and everything that goes to Liberty USO stays for the troops that transition or are stationed in this area. Now, the USO mission statement is to enhance the quality of life to the military and their families wherever we happen to be worldwide, and to build a bridge between the civilian and the military communities in which they serve. Here at Philadelphia International Airport, we maintain our lounge. It's, if there's been a delay in a flight, a cancellation of a flight, the troops or their families can go there. We maintain an incredible TV lounge, complete with lounge, leather lounge chairs. We have 8 bunks with thermopedic mattresses. There's a little cafe. They can get a hot meal, cooked 24 hours a day, and there's never a charge for them, although we do accept donations. Now, one of the most difficult, and with each one of the missions, locations that I describe, I want to describe a particular mission that sticks in my head. All right. I've been doing this for 7 years, and it's been an earth-shattering experience for those that do community service work. A few weeks ago, we all heard on the newspaper that there were 9 American service personnel that were killed in Afghanistan as a result of an Afghan pilot that had a disagreement. Well, the bodies, as you may know, come into the mortuary, the military mortuary at Dover. But a lot of times the families come into Philadelphia International. And these families come into our station, right? Now, in addition to feeding them, you do what any family member would do. You try your best that you can to comfort them at the worst time of their life. We provide ground support, we provide shelter, food, and sometimes travel vouchers. Some of the other programs that USO has available to the military and their members, in addition to our entertainment and our duty stations, is we provide cash travel vouchers for emergencies. If a soldier is deployed forward and there's been a death in the family, a lot of times they don't have the money that they have available to them that they can buy those plane tickets. We provide cash vouchers for that. If you're familiar with the hardships of a military family with a member on forward deployment, you don't have to think too hard what that budget's going to do when the transmission on your car goes or the hot water heater goes and there's nobody at home to fix it. We provide cash vouchers for that as well. We also have some very important programs as far as psychological counseling for the children. It's a devastating situation for a child to get, be a family member that gets that KIA report and that's killed in action. They have bereavement groups where these children can get together with other children that have experienced the same loss of their family members, and they go away for 2 weeks in the summertime, expense paid, and they have their grief counselors there. They have the opportunity to commiserate with other children their own age and get the start of a healing process going. We also have camps for military children entirely where they can just go away and be kids for 2 weeks, because all the kids that are there are in the same boat. There's a few of the other programs that I want to talk about that, unfortunately, as I say, we don't get any funding. We have to rely on donations. Now, every soldier that deploys forward to Iraq, Afghanistan, or Kosovo, where we still have troops, is given a care package. And probably the most valuable thing in that care package is a 100-minute international phone card that they can call home free of charge at their convenience. We had to discontinue that for 3 months last year because we just run out of funds for it. Now, we're the only USO unit in the country that serves a hot meal for troops deploying forward to the war zones, as well as a welcome home meal when they come back. When the troops show up at Fort Dix, at the McGuire portion of the base, they're served a full hot meal depending upon what time of the day it is. And I have the honor and privilege of being one of the lead cooks. All right? It's hard to describe what it's like to hand that soldier a hot breakfast as he's ready to get on that plane to go downrange. Now, it's not nearly as bad as it was 5 or 6 years ago when they were all deploying, because now our troops, even our Guard and Reserve units, are seasoned combat veterans. And they know their job. They don't ask for your sympathy. They ask for your report or your support. More than one occasion, I've had a soldier tell me, "Sir, don't feel sorry for me. I volunteered to be a soldier." With that thought in mind, it's hard to describe what it's like when those soldiers got a soldier up, slam their weapon, and march out the door. I've seen kids that looked like they were all of about 15 years old and a little bit concerned, shoulder up and shoulder their weapon and march out the door like soldiers that we could all be proud of. Now, when they come inbound, my favorite time is at 2 o'clock in the morning to be able to pull onto that base. I'm not a veteran, so to have the opportunity, the honor and privilege to pull onto that base at 2 o'clock in the morning, walk through the halls of Bravo Company Readiness Battalion, and cook their welcome home breakfast is an honor that I can't describe. I have the privilege of standing alongside the Vietnam veterans of the Bordentown Chapter 899. Every soldier that gets off that bus, when he gets off, he still has his battle pack, dusty boots, and a weapon slung on his back. We've had the privilege of being the first 12 civilians to shake their hand and cook their welcome home meal. Right? There's something else that you want to think about with these meals. With the 38 members of the Pennsylvania National Guard that were killed on forward deployment, it wasn't necessarily me, but it was one of my teams. We had the honor and privilege to cook their last American meal. I hope that means something to you. When they come inbound, the bus pulls up after the plane lands and every soldier gets off. It doesn't matter whether they're a private or a 4-star general, they will walk the gauntlet and shake every hand before they get to our front door. They walk through the front door and we have a breakfast buffet that I can serve at any restaurant along Route 1. Then we had the opportunity, they go through a review of General Order Number 1 and the demobilization process, and I had the honor on the inbound missions of being the first civilian to address the troops, so I get to say thank you for all of you. How I stumbled into an honor that big, I'll never understand, but I cherish it more than I could ever describe. I promise you one thing, those of us that have gray hair, remember how the Vietnam veterans were treated when they come home, and it's a national disgrace that this country carries the scars of to this day. It ain't like that no more, folks, okay? I had the honor and privilege. We know that Fort Dix, McGuire, Lakehurst is apparently the only base, and we handle mostly reserve units and National Guard units deploying forward, and we handle more of them than any other base in the country, and apparently we're the only base that does that. Well, when you handle just under 200,000 troops and their family last year, it cost a whole lot of money for food. Our food budget alone is over $15,000 a quarter, and we don't just serve hot dogs, okay? But we don't get anything from anybody, folks. But as I said, we also have a duty station out at Willow Grove and Fort Indian Town Gap, and we would love desperately to open one out in Pittsburgh International Airport as well, because currently we have no duty stations to serve our troops that come out from Fort Indian Town Gap, from out in Altoona, Pittsburgh, and out in that general vicinity, and they all come through us. I thank you so much for the fact that you're willing to take the time and help us raise money. Right now, this very weekend, the USO has 3 other events going on around town. The military, this also happens to be, I just found out this afternoon, the 3rd Saturday of May is Armed Services Day. So consequently, getting the military to do anything beyond what they've already got, it takes a whole lot more planning than what I had the opportunity to put into it. But I'd like to take the time, I'd like everybody in this township to think for just a minute. The other day we voted. We had the freedom to vote. Now, you folks all have the opportunity to watch TV, and for the last 2 months, we've seen governments slaughtering their people for peaceful protest. Now, those brave men and women in our military, they put their lives on hold and their butts on the line to protect our right. And as an American civilian, I feel like we should all owe them a little bit of an apology. Okay, the country's in a whole lot of crap right now, okay? And we can point the fingers at all you politicians and blame you, but the first place we have to look is in the mirror, because it's a government of the people, for the people, and by the people. And the whole world has seen the Iraqi civilians and the Afghani civilians parade around with a purple finger in the air, that for the very first time in history, they were given the opportunity to determine their own fate. And that was bought and paid for by the brave men and women in our uniform. And we can't hit 50% of our population, and we give them rides to the polls. We ought to be ashamed of ourselves. Now, if you appreciate the fact that our troops prevent our government from firing on us, they even protect the Second Amendment, right? They protect our freedom of speech. They protect everything that we hold dear as an American citizen. I ask each and every one of you in this room tonight, and every member of this township, take that into consideration, come out and enjoy yourself this weekend, and perhaps the sacrifice that these brave men and women are making on our behalf is worth at least the price of a case of beer or a night out on the town. And if you want to make sure that it goes to the troops as they're in this area or transitioning this area, make that check out to Liberty USO or USO of Southern Pennsylvania and New Jersey. And every penny of it goes here, okay? Also, the point that I haven't made is we only have 7 paid personnel with Liberty USO. We have over 250 volunteers. And I can promise you this, the people that do draw a paycheck from Liberty USO are grossly overworked and embarrassingly underpaid, right? You can support what we're doing. You can show your support for our troops and their families. And you can do it in a way that means something. Send a check and send it today to Liberty USO. We're down at 8500 Essington Way at Philadelphia International Airport, Terminal A East. Thank you very much for your time, folks.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, John. Like I said, it's a great cause this weekend. And I should add that it's a free event. There's no charge to get into the event. There's something there for everybody, from the car show to the craft fair. There's going to be rides for the kids, food vendors. It's going to be a great time, so I hope everybody can come out. It's supposed to be nice weather on Saturday and Sunday. Parking may be a problem. We're probably going to be parking at Pennsbury East and having a shuttle bus drive us back and forth, because we can't really park on the soccer fields. So with that, thank you very much, John and Tom and Mr. Kenny.
What time?
I'm sorry, 10 a.m. till 7 p.m. on Saturday, noon till 5 on Sunday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I believe there's something on the and the cable channel?
Cable and website, yes.
In the
All right,
newspaper,
some
too.
information. Yeah, and it was actually an article in the newspaper today about it, which was nice. However, I was a little bit disappointed in the article, only in the sense that, you know, like I said, Mr. Dentz has done a tremendous amount of work on this, and the Courier-Times took the liberty of mentioning that they're helping to sponsor it, patting themselves on the back, and I think they mentioned Mr. Christine's name, which is appropriate, but they, you know, never mentioned Mr. Dentz, which I think was, you know, sort of an unfair slight for somebody who's done a lot of work on this for obviously an outstanding cause. And so I want to thank him especially, and
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I want to go a little bit further, sorry. Bill Reese has been working a lot on this, as has our police department and the park security, all of them trying to coordinate this. So it's a lot of people putting their hands in for a very, very good cause.
Joe
And,
Arneo in the Public
Joe
Works
Arneo
have done a
Public
lot,
Works
too.
as well. So with the whole township government pulling together. So it's a great cause, again, and thank all those who are involved. And come on out. There's, you know, it's going to be a fun time, right? Finally, the rain's going to stop, right? So
Why
thank
can't
you.
we give them money? We certainly brought a lot of it into the township.
Well, we'll take it. If you'd like to make a motion, Mrs. Vislowski?
Yes. We can do up to 10,000. Is that still correct, Mr. Rudolph?
The donation, there's no limit on donation.
Well, I'll move that we donate $10,000.
I'll second the
To
motion.
Liberty USO, correct?
Correct.
Absolutely.
All right, motion is seconded. Mrs. Pullen, pull the board, please.
Mr. Zupka?
Yes.
Mrs. Wislowski?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Dentz?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes. Okay, thank you very much. All right, thank you. Okay, we're going to address item number 1 on our agenda is consider proposal from Traffic Planning and Design, our traffic engineers, for a traffic calming pavement marking project. As members of the public will, and board members will remember, last year we held a special meeting involving our police department and our traffic engineers, inviting members of the public to come out and talk about some traffic issues around the township. Our police department took those suggestions and have sort of made some sort of affects the way they're patrolling our roads and highways. But our traffic engineers have gotten together with one of our police officers, Officer Trindle, who specializes in traffic safety, as well as talking to township staff about some more ways to address the traffic calming situation in this township. Mr. Gray, do you want to add on to this?
Yes, Township did receive a proposal for study and construction bidding and contract administration services for the traffic calming pavement marking project from Traffic Planning and Design. This project would be for several roads within the township. Total cost for the project is $5,900 for the study and $4,750 for construction bidding. The board is asked to consider this proposal. Here tonight to answer any further questions the board may have is Jerry Baker from Traffic Planning Design.
Mr. Baker? Give us an idea of the roads we're talking about and what exactly this project would entail.
Okay, as far as the roads go, we met with township staff, I think it was back in January. We mentioned several roads. There was probably 6 or 8 that were mentioned at least. I'm not exactly sure which direction the township would want to go, but the proposal was for, I believe, it was 4 streets that we were looking at to start off and get an idea if this type of traffic calming is going to be effective. And then if it works, then the township could proceed and do all the roads. That was the thinking in preparing this proposal.
Okay. And what kind of studies? What's going to be going on with these studies? What are you trying to study?
As far as the study goes, what we were looking to do is, again, pick 4 roads within the township that the supervisors would identify, complete traffic counts and speed studies on those roads at least 2 locations per road. That would do 2 things for us. One, it would help identify if there truly is a speeding problem. And then second, after the measures are implemented, we could go back and repeat the studies and we could see how effective these measures are. And then we could apply that to future projects in the township. So we were proposing to conduct a site visit, measure the roads, identify signing, potential problems that exist today, conduct the traffic counts and the speed studies, as I mentioned. After we have that information, get together with township staff and the police department, visit the site, and identify what exactly we want to do. We'd have some better information at that point because we would have collected all of our data. And then go back and prepare a study and some sort of a plan indicating where these devices would go. And then coming back and presenting those findings to the township at a public meeting. And then the second part of the proposal is actually for construction bidding and contract administration services, which would actually be taking those plans or that study, putting it out to bid so that you could have a contractor come in and actually do the work, and we would oversee that whole process.
Okay. All right, so essentially, you're going to be coming back sort of between Part A and Part B, so we could sort of, approve Part A as of now, and then if we are going to go out to bid, then we could, later on look at Part B as approving that at a later date. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Okay, and the roads we're looking at, I know Officer Trindle had a lot of input on this. Mr. Gray, just looking for the roads in here. I couldn't find them. I knew you'd.
I believe it was Alston.
I had Lower Thornridge, Austin Drive, Winding Way, and Alden Avenue.
Okay, that's right. Okay, Alden was the one I couldn't remember. Okay. All right, and those are ones based on, as I said, Officer Trindle is the one who handles a lot of our traffic safety issues and accidents, and is recognized around the state for his expertise in that field. So they're working off of his recommendations. Obviously, we know there are a lot of roads where speeding is an issue. So we're not questioning that, and this is not sort of all we're going to do, but in his opinion, these are the roads that we really can get a decent idea of what's happening and get a good picture, and we can figure out the next steps to take. Regarding those 4 roads, and then that'll help give us an idea of where we can go with the roads after that. Okay. Comments or questions from board members? Mr. Zipka?
It isn't decided at this point what type of, as you said, devices or for traffic calming. You're going to do the study and see what might fit best in the specific locations. Correct?
I think my understanding is that we've identified the type of measures we're looking for, and we're going to limit it to pavement markings at this time. So we'd probably be looking at center line, double yellow lines along the center line of the road, speed limit markings on the road to help enforce the speed limit, and stop bars and the word stop at the multi-way stop intersections.
Thank you.
Mr. Snipes?
Assuming that, I mean, these are all streets we've talked about before. These are streets where we've already identified that there are issues. And in some cases, residents have come and talked to us either here in the meetings or outside the meetings when they find us about the issues on those streets. So this is only marking. You used the word device, which I think threw a couple of us off. But
I apologize for that.
in that
yeah,
instance, you're talking about just marking on the pavement.
Yes,
Right.
and signing as well. There might be some additional signing. that we would
Signage might happen
recommend.
as well. Okay. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Dents?
Back when we had our special meeting about the traffic calming, Mr. Baker went over a lot of different options. And he's talking about striping the street. And one of the options that we went over was using the thermoplastic rather than paint. And if you actually put it in layers, it actually does create almost, not a speed bump, but you can feel it as you drive over it. So there are so many options we could be looking at, whether it's just paint, the thermoplastic, 2 coats of thermoplastic to raise it even higher. It was a very informative meeting. And the streets, I believe Mr. Officer Trindle has an email set up where residents actually send in issues they have on certain streets.
It's on the website, correct?
I believe so.
Yeah. So these are streets that he targeted, these first 4, where he gets a lot of complaints, where the police have a lot of problems already. So a lot of thought went into that, but that's all I have.
Okay. And obviously, this is sort of starting at the easiest, most cost-efficient way, we hope, any way of looking at it. Seeing if this works, striping it, as Mr. Dent said, using various kinds of materials that might even raise the level of the paint or the thermoplastic. So if there's chevrons, for example, and you see 25 mph, painted on the road, it's going to catch your eye more maybe than just that white sign that you're always used to seeing that has the numbers on it. You just ignore it. If you're seeing it on the road, it's something different. And striping the road oftentimes gives the appearance of the road is actually narrower, which can tend to make you drive a little slower. Because you don't have all the space on either side. We're hoping. So this is kind of what we're looking at this point. Obviously, There are a lot of things we can do. And I've said it before, short of putting a police officer on every single mile of Township Road, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, there's nothing we're going to be able to do to completely stop speeding and people that, blow through stop signs. We're never going to do it. That really depends more on the residents, to drive safely and pay attention to speeding, speed laws and traffic safety laws, et cetera. So, but this is obviously a step we want to take because we want to make sure that we're trying to do something maybe to lessen the problem as much as we can. Is there any public comment? Let's see one hand. Is there a motion to open public comment?
So moved.
Second.
All right, motion made and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Binney?
My question's more towards the second part of this proposal.
Okay.
Road painting, things like that. I see our guys out there doing that all the time. Why would we have to pay somebody to oversee them putting these stripings down? Why is that even a consideration?
Well, that wouldn't necessarily be for the striping itself. If we decide as a board that we're just going to use paint, our people are obviously well qualified to do it. And so that really wouldn't be necessarily bidding. The thermoplastic, however, is something our road crew doesn't have the expertise with, and I'm not sure if we have the equipment for. And so that's something, if we decide to take that step, depending on how much of this we need, and that's one of the reasons why we're holding off on bidding for the construction, depending on how many of these areas we need, how many stop bars might be painting or speed limit on the road, it could go over the $10,000 limit, in which case we'd have to bid it. It could come back, Mr. Baker can make a recommendation, and we could find a way to keep it under $10,000, and we wouldn't have to bid it, and we wouldn't need that service.
So if it's something that our guys can do, then we're going to do it in-house. We're not going to spend the money to go through that process.
They gave us almost a Chinese menu of options, a price for painting just stripes as opposed to thermoplastic, a painting for a stop bar, thermoplastic for a stop bar, one layer, chevrons, the price, and it was the whole breakdown. So when they come back and tell us what we can do, we could say, well, we could just paint here, maybe we'll thermoplastic here, one layer, two layers, and so on.
Okay.
But we need to know exactly. They need to be the ones to tell us, this is how many of these chevrons you need, this is where you should put it, this is, and once we have that figure, then we'll know.
I understand that part. I just was.
Yeah. No, we're not.
The second part there.
Yeah.
I'm concerned about.
That was a good question. Thank you for bringing it up. I should have pointed it out.
I just wanted to add, too, the other reasons we were talking about the hot thermoplastic, besides actually being able to feel the texture, is that they last much longer.
Right.
With paint, you might be going out every year, every other year,
right,
where the thermoplastic will last much longer.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Mr. Dell?
Are you talking about plastic double yellow line? Is that what you're talking about, or are you talking about the stop sign, the white strips?
Both. Everything, even in some cases you might see driving along, they have the numbers 25 at wherever the speed limit is painted on the road surface with chevrons, that might sort of, you think there's something coming up and you start slowing down. So
don't they tend to be slick in the rain when you come to a stop and you pull away? I mean, I know even when they paint the lines, when it's raining out and you got to take off, your wheels spin, they catch, they spin, they catch until you, maybe I'm giving a little bit too much throttle, but I mean, but for most part, most cars, you hear them even, they just skip over those lines. And am I to believe that a yellow line painted down the center of Austin Drive is going to slow someone down?
We're not talking about the center, I don't think. I think we're talking about the sides.
Well,
to give you the illusion of narrowing the street.
I mean, it's
in some places, not necessarily Austin.
Right. But that's
Okay.
one of the things
That's
that
one of the
Mr.
things we're
Baker's going to
gonna
look
do,
at.
yeah.
What does he think is going to work? I mean, obviously, these are the guys who do it for a living, so they can give
Yes.
us an idea of, based on past other places and the kind of best management practices, this is probably going to work here, this is probably going to work there.
And the $10,000 is for actually what, the study?
No, the 10,000 would be for both. With the study is 5,900 to do all the measurements, to go out and do all the traffic counts at all the roads for over a period of time and do all the studies and everything else. If they come back and it looks like we're going to have to spend more than $10,000 to implement all these steps, if the township spends more than $10,000 in a project, it has to be publicly bid. And so in that case, there'd have to be a whole bidding procedure that they would oversee. If they come back and it looks like we're not going to spend that much money, then we don't have to do the bidding process. It's a different story.
They could come back and we end up doing it all ourselves.
Right. So,
Okay.
Which would be the ideal situation.
Well, I guess the point is, too, is once you start painting this stuff and you go through, you have to continually paint
Right.
this stuff year after year after year.
that's the idea of the thermoplastic, but as Mr. Baker just said, is more permanent. You don't
Yes.
have to do it all the time.
Until
So-
you, dig up the road and replace the road, or is
I
it
don't know how
last?
long, it lasts a couple of years. I'm not sure what the lifespan is for, I guess it depends on what you're doing, what you're painting, the 5 or 10 years
Some of the
possibly.
conditions of the road.
Right. So,
People spinning their tires on it, I'm sure isn't good.
No, I'm sure it isn't, but I just wasn't sure that painting lines on the side of the road, and, I mean, you have the stop signs there, you have the speed limit signs there. If they're not paying attention to those, I truly believe they're not going to pay attention to a yellow line painted down the side of Austin, Winding Way, whatever these roads are, because typically there's cars parked along the side of the road. We've all been down those roads, so the yellow line is going to encompass where the cars are parked. I hate to say it, but it just seems like a waste of money. Even I don't think you're going to get the kind of safety out of painting lines and stop strips, because they're blowing through stop signs that are clearly marked both directions, and they haven't stopped at them yet. And the police could sit there all day and pull people over literally all day.
Right.
My parents live close to Austin Drive, and the cars do 60. Phil lives on Austin Drive, and I mean, he can attest
street.
It's every street. They just ignore the stop signs, and I just don't think painting lines is going to make a difference, but that's just my opinion.
Okay.
Thank you.
We had our special meeting, when was that? Back in last April, I think?
was
Last
July.
July.
Yeah.
They went through a whole presentation of all different things you could do, all different options. And the easiest and most cost-effective, and that actually worked, was the painting and marking the streets. They do in Lower Makefield. If you go over to Lower Makefield in Middletown, there's a lot of it painted in the roads. You drive through the sections, they have the chevrons and the speed limit, and it actually works there. So, you know, this is a big issue, the traffic calming that we get complaints about all the time, everywhere you go. So this is our first step in trying to do something.
Okay. Mr. Baker, if you wouldn't mind commenting, Mr. Dell's point about the nature, the slippery, possibly slippery nature if these things get wet. If it's thermoplastic and it gets wet, or if it's painted and it gets wet, is there any kind of treatment to the paint? Is there any kind of, sand or gravel put in it that well, not gravel, I'm sorry, but some kind of texture put to it, or is any kind of anything to show that there's something in regards to making it?
I'm not sure what they put for slip resistance. I think there's glass beads embedded in it, and the idea is that as the traffic wears the surface down, it remains its reflectivity over the years, where paint can lose that. As far as the skid resistance, though, I don't know the exact answer to that, but we're only talking about a stop bar that's less than 2 feet wide. Theoretically, you would have come to a stop and
before it,
before you hit that. So, and then the double yellow lines most likely would be like an epoxy paint. Usually the long lines, they can do that with a truck. That probably would not be hot thermo.
Right. Okay. All right. Any other public comment needed? See no hands. Or a motion to close public comment?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, could I ask one more question?
Sure.
Following up on Mr. Dell's point, is there some easy study information that you could give us that documents what other communities have experienced when they have used these type of markings on the roads, whether there's, calculation reduction in accidents or slowing speeds or fewer complaints from residents? Is there that kind of information that we can also use to weigh whether we do this, whether it's a good use of funds or not?
Again, I know we've done it in Lower Makefield. I don't know that we've done any follow-up studies at this point to determine if there was, any kind of benefit. But the traffic calming manual that PennDOT puts out is publication 383. I believe they mentioned in there that you can expect about a 1 to 2 mile per hour reduction with pavement markings, which doesn't sound like a lot, but speed humps, you might get up to 3 or 4 miles per hour. So, I mean, it's something. It's a noticeable difference anyway.
And it may be useful in the areas where we have the most complaints and the most near misses and the most accidents and problems.
Yeah.
So, okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I've read quite a few articles on, we'll say, traffic calming from around the country, and the articles I've read, it really boils down to, we'll say, educating the residents and/or the drivers, which basically is more of an enforcement issue. And true, we can't have an officer every place that it's happening. And what I've read also on just putting markings in the road, yes, it will lower it 1 or 2 miles an hour, but also maybe only on 3% of the drivers that go down that area. It's not like everybody is going to slow down. It's a very, very small a percentage of it. When you get into the speed bumps or speed humps, which aren't quite as bad, the rumble strips which are in there, but then we've had them before on Austin Drive. We run into a problem with plows, even using the raised lines. The snow plows will take them out in a short amount of time. I know something has to be done about this, and again, I believe a lot of it has to be with the education. Just you pull up to an intersection with a traffic light, and they have stop lines, and most of the people, I don't think, have any understanding of what a stop line is. They're halfway into the crosswalk, waiting for the light to change. But frankly, if we're looking at just putting markings on the road and increased signage, I can't support this.
Okay. All right. Other board comments? Like I said, we're looking at Part A and Part B here. Part A would be the first couple steps of doing the studies, which would be $5,900. Part B would be the construction bidding, which we obviously would probably want to hold off on until we find out exactly what it is that we'd be doing. If there's no more board comment, Chair will entertain a motion.
I want to make a motion to approve the Part A pavement marking study at the price of $5,900.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Zupka?
No.
Mrs. Wislowski?
No?
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Dents?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. Baker. Appreciate your work. All right, item 2 on our agenda is consider authorization to advertise amendment to Chapter 168 Parks to add a Section 20, which is a no-wake zone. We've have some people or a gentleman here from T&M Engineering who's been helping us out a lot with our boat ramp. I think he has some information which is going to be maybe make this item not be an item. So, Mr. Gray, you want to introduce this?
Yes, Township was requested to consider authorization to advertise amendment to Chapter 168 to enact a no-wake zone. Recently, we found out the U.S. Coast Guard initially directed us to enact a local ordinance that would establish the no-wake zone so they could approve an application for the installation of aid to navigation buoys. There was a question that remained: how would the ordinance be enforced and what would be the consequences for violating the no-wake zone? We did call the New Jersey State Police. They told us that the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission has jurisdiction and enforcement policies on the Pennsylvania side, and we should talk to them about our concerns. We did call the southeast region of the PA Fish and Boat Commission. We asked if we are required to get U.S. Coast Guard approval, and he told us that we do not. They are only interested in ensuring that the buoys are not in conflict with federal navigable channel. The bottom line is we do not need a local ordinance. We already have a state law establishing the no-wake ordinance for the shore and docks and the ramp.
Okay. Mr. Jones works as engineer with our T&M Engineering, and he's been doing a lot of the work assisting Mr. Sullivan on putting in the boat ramp and doing all the work with this. And I know you're a pretty big boater, and you've been giving us some pretty invaluable information about how to conduct our operations with this. So the Coast Guard tells us we need to enact a no-wake zone. We're going to put up buoys near our docks to help people sort of navigate in and navigate out. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct.
Right. And then the Coast Guard told us we needed to put in a no-wake zone ordinance so that could be enforced by the New Jersey State Police if they're out on the river, because it's their responsibility to patrol the river, correct?
That's correct.
And now we're being told that we don't need a no-wake zone.
Yeah, I think the confusion came, if you want to call it confusion, when the Coast Guard is concerned with the navigable channel, and they would be concerned with the ships and us not installing aids to navigation that would confuse the ships out in the shipping lane. So they would accept the application on that premise and give us advice based on that premise. However, The PA Fish and Boat, we found out through the Marine Barracks of the State Police, actually have the teeth to enforce anyone violating a no-wake zone. And I was told by the director of the Southeast region that if we're 100 feet offshore, that's the state law requirement for a no-wake zone. And that would be far enough away from the navigable channel where you wouldn't have to go to the Coast Guard. So the Coast Guard needed the ordinance, but we don't have to go to the Coast Guard because we're so far off the navigable channel. So that was kind of the evolution of what happened. But at the end of the day, there's a state law in effect that regulates a no-wake zone 100 feet from the shoreline along the entire Falls Township coast. And so all we would need is their permission to install these markers to demarcate the zone that we want to call attention to near the ramp. And so in order for us to make that installation, they would issue a permit, the PA Fish and Boat, and it would be in line with the state law, so we wouldn't need an ordinance.
Okay, all right. So essentially, you know, this would have been a local law, but since there's a state law, we don't even need it.
That's absolutely correct.
Okay, all right. Suppose there's no action then. We don't need to take anything. I mean,
I think the bottom line is we probably don't have jurisdiction that
right.
It's within the state. We don't have it as to that portion of the river.
That's correct.
Right.
So are we putting buoys in or not?
We are going to mark out what's established by the state law. And it's a visual deterrent. Boaters should know that by taking a boater safety course. However, you know, it's a visual deterrent, so it's going to help people realize, okay, there's something here that we have to slow down for.
Okay.
And it should be self-policing. You know, I mean, the enforcement done by the Fish and Boat, they've, you know, by their own admission, they don't have a big presence on the river because they're, you know, they're not funded by taxpayer dollars. They're funded by fishing licenses and such. So the New Jersey State Police will be the main presence to enforce this area.
Okay. All right, and anybody that boats on the river knows that New Jersey State Police are the ones who do all the patrolling. You see their boats going up and down.
Yes.
All right, well, then there's, I didn't know how people came out for that, and that was just information that came to us just earlier today, really. We found out that this was something we didn't actually need to do. So, Mr. Jones, I appreciate your time and all the work you've put in on this. So, all right, so we can just skip that one.
Thank you.
That was easy.
Yeah, that was easy. All right. Okay, item 3 is consider purchase of a community garden fence. Mr. Gray.
Yes, Lieutenant Ward from the Falls Township Police Department has provided a quote for fencing in the amount of $3,210.31 for the community garden. The board is asked to consider this purchase. Lieutenant Ward is here to discuss any concerns or questions the board may have.
Okay. Lieutenant Ward, thank you for coming out. I know you've been putting a lot of work into this community garden for quite a while now.
Good evening. The area that we selected is down at the Township Park. If you know Phase 1, back by the shed where the soccer people keep their equipment. The area has already been plowed up and ready to go. What we're looking for now is a fence to keep the deer and other animals outside of the garden. To do a traditional fence would be very expensive. So what we did is we put our heads together and we came up with an alternative fence, and it's called a deer buster fence. I supplied some information to Mr. Gray regarding that, and there was a sample of the fence in there. I think it'll be sufficient for our needs. It's something that we can install ourselves. We don't have to have any outside labor or anything to do it. It'll be all volunteer work. The materials themselves would cost $3,072, and the shipping of the materials will be an additional $138. So the total would come to $3,210.
Okay. And give us just a little background on what exactly a community garden is, if someone's interested in getting involved with it, how does it work?
This concept we read about probably about 10 years ago. We started doing some exploratory work into this. Our main hurdle was finding a location. This year, actually last year, it started to come together. We found a pretty decent area down the park. You seem to be acceptable to it. The board seemed to be acceptable to it. We put out an exploratory committee. About 10 citizens from the community are involved. And basically what it is it was originally started in Chicago in the late 60s, and it was sponsored by the police department, the Chicago Police Department, to get a better interaction with police and citizens. If anybody's a gardener, you know these people are usually pretty passionate about what they do. But once they get to see police being involved with it and interaction with police, and they start seeing the police as their neighbors instead of just people that drive around in cars and answer calls. It's a very good tool for the police department because we get to learn what's going on in their communities, something that they may not call a hotline or call the radio room for. They just might blurt out, hey, do you know, my neighbor just had his car broken into, something that we might not have been aware of. And we start gaining information like that. So that's the benefit to the police department. Obviously, the benefit to the community is they have a place to garden. It's a pretty big area. You can get a lot of gardening done there. They're very excited about it. And like I said, they're very passionate. And I think it would be good for both the community and the police department.
Okay. All right. Comments or questions from board members for Lieutenant Ward? Mr. Zupka?
How high is the fence going to be?
The fence is going to be 8 feet high.
Okay.
It's made of a synthetic mesh. So if it's designed so if you're standing a distance away, let's just say from the pavilion, you won't even be able to see the fence. You'll look right through it. It's like almost like a camouflage.
It's almost like a Mylar
Yes,
material?
exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
Mrs. Wisłowski?
Hank, will there be any policing of the project?
Yes.
There will be. Could you elaborate on how and when?
For patrols, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, there'll be special assignments. Guys at night will have to check that so many times a night to make sure that there's no vandalisms. Hopefully, if there's deer that are able to get there, they can chase a deer away.
Yeah. Well, even from two-legged animals, you know, when
Yes.
they eat the vegetables are grown.
Yes.
And how do you prevent theft?
Hope for the good nature of our fellow citizens. It doesn't always work out like that, but the guys will keep a periodic check. There'll be assignments. Guys in that sector will be responsible for checking it routinely throughout the night.
How expensive is it to put a camera down there?
I'd never looked into that. I could ask.
Might be an option if we have trouble.
Yes. Well, I believe we have access to portable cameras, so if we do have hot spots, we can set a camera up in different locations.
Good. With the cost of vegetables now, you know, I was in Florida, and I'm looking at the price of oranges up here, and they're that much down in Florida. 50 cents a grapefruit is a lot of money for a state that's abundant with them, you know. So at any rate, we have to consider the theft aspect because money is tight right now.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Mr. Snipes?
Yes, I don't want to be pessimistic, but I'm wondering if 8 feet is truly high enough.
They're pretty crafty. Like I said, it's better than nothing. And to do a traditional fence at 10 feet high, for example, by the dog park, you know how expensive that fence was, and I just think that would it's too much money. I think this will work. Hopefully, we can try some other things to keep the deer away. There's other ways to do that, and we'll see if that, you know, if we're having a problem with the fence, we can try that.
I've heard of fences, I haven't seen them myself, but I've heard of them that are placed at an angle so the deer are forced to jump not only up, but also out.
Right.
And they're pretty good judges of what they can do and can't do, so
Right.
it might be something to consider in the future.
Okay.
We use electric fences around our growing fields, and that works like a charm. You may not want to do that there because of the
I think
potential
with
shock.
with the kids and stuff, I don't know if that's a good idea.
It does work. I'm telling you, it does work. It even keeps groundhogs out. So. But I think it's a great project, and I think we should do it.
Yeah. Okay. Mr. Dell?
What'd you call me?
Mr. Dell. I'm sorry. Boy, that was, wow. Wow. I apologize for that. Wow. Boy, didn't even have
I think
a
it's a
hat
great idea. No, I have no questions or comments.
Phew. Boy. If are there lots? I know some lots have been taken, or how's it work?
What we did was we have a layout already set up. We showed Pete the plans. It'll be 32 10 by 20 plots, which is a good size.
Yeah.
So we have 32 available. I believe we have 10 people already signed up, and people have been calling during the week after we plowed it up. People are calling and asking to get more spots.
Okay, great. And what would they call? What number would they call?
They could call the police department, 215-949-9100. My extension is 327. And if we get approval here tonight, I will get it put on the website and on the community channel.
Right. Okay. All right. Any public comment needed? I see one hand. Is there a motion to open public comment?
Mr. Dents?
Yeah.
So moved.
Yeah, the real Mr. Dell, please
Yeah,
stand
right,
up.
here we go. I just want to make sure they keep an opening in that fence to bring equipment in and out of there if we have to, say, till it up again, add soil, anything like that. I didn't know how the fence was going to be installed, but I didn't know if it was semi-permanent or if there's going to be some sort of opening in it.
Right, that's a good question. Lieutenant Ward, you want to deal with that?
Yes, we're going to have 3 openings in the fence. The first one will be 10 feet wide for equipment, and then there'll be 2 side gates that are also there.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Perfect.
Any other comments or questions? See no hands. Is there a motion to close public comment?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, so we're looking then at approving $3,210.31 for the community garden fence. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Moved by Mrs. Kozlowski, second by Mr. Dents.
You didn't do it twice.
No, I did not. I did not do it twice. Mrs. Pullen.
Mr. Zepka?
Yes.
Mrs. Kozlowski?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Dents?
Yes.
Mr.
There you
Snipes?
go.
Yes.
See, she got it right. All right, thank you. And thank you, Lieutenant Ward. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, item 4 is discussion on proposed zoning changes in the Nottingham section of Fallsington. Board members and members of the public, remember we had a pretty good discussion, long discussion about some changes that were proposed to be made to zoning in that area, the Nottingham section of Fallsington. The original plan that was made essentially was scrapped after that discussion. We asked Mr. Bennett to kind of go back and take a look at some other options, and we asked him to come here tonight to give us an idea what he thinks might be a good avenue to take. So, Mr. Bennett. And just so before Mr. Bennett speaks, this discussion tonight, we wouldn't actually be approving anything. At most, what we may decide to do is to authorize him to sort of finalize this and advertise it for some later meeting when we would look to approve it. So this is discussion on possibilities at this point. Ms. Bennett.
Good evening. Yeah, after the last meeting, went through the numbers and looked at everything, and this big concern seemed to be that there was an increase by 5% in impervious surface, and people were having some water problems. So then what I come up with is to go back to the original numbers that are in this book, in this zoning book that was adopted in 1975, which is essentially right before the development was built.
Right.
Changing from this book that was adopted December of 2008, just change it back to these numbers, and that way everything would be the same as what it used to be.
Okay, so basically, the people there who bought the houses in 1980, 81, 82, whenever they happened to buy the house or whenever the houses were built, changing zoning back to what it was then and what it stayed for almost 30 years.
Right.
Okay.
That was the best thing we could come up with.
Okay, all right. Comments or questions from board members? Mr. Zipka?
Not at this time.
Mrs. Kozlowski?
Nothing, Tom.
Yeah. Mr. Snipes?
Wasn't there also a concern from residents about setbacks? Is that going
Yeah,
to
there
be-
were some concerns regarding setbacks, and that's why we kind of felt we'll just go back to what it always was. Everybody seemed to be content with the setbacks that they were before, instead of making some less, some more. And so we
I
just
think they were
back to
concerned that they
basics.
were going to become less and that they were going to have their neighbors constructing right on their or close to their property lines. So what you're proposing now will take those setbacks to what distance?
Well, we were proposing to change it to MHR.
Right.
Which part of the development already is MHR.
Right.
And that did decrease some of the setbacks. So to go back to the same setbacks and impervious surface and building coverage that it was before, we'll put them back to where they were before.
Okay, thank you.
Mr.
I know,
Dents?
excuse me, I know it's indicated, I spoke to Mr. Clark, something to the extent that rather than have 10 and 15 feet setbacks, this would be 35 feet.
That was going to be my question. What exactly are the numbers? Like, what they are now and what they will be changed to?
Okay, right now, the book that we're using right now, that's the reason that we're trying to make a change, because there's some major mistakes in it. Right now, the minimum lot size is 15,000 feet. And we're going to reduce that to 12,500 feet, which is really closer to what the development is. The size of the lots are usually around between 10 and 12.5 anyway. The minimum lot frontage now is 100 feet. It used to be 80 feet, so it'll go back to 80 feet. The minimum lot width now is 100 feet. That will go to 90 feet. The minimum lot depth right now is 175 feet. That'll go to 150 feet. Front yard setback right now is 40 feet. That'll go back to 25 feet. Side yard setback is 20 feet. That will go back to 15 feet. The rear yard is 50 feet. That'll go down to 40 feet. Accessory structures. Right now, it's 10 feet to the side and rear, and that will go down to 5 feet. Distance between buildings on the same lot, it's 20 feet now. That'll go back to 10 feet. The building coverage, the maximum allowable building coverage right now is 8%, which all the homes are already at probably 15 or a little greater. So that'll go up to 30%. The maximum impervious surface right now is 25%, and that will go back to 40. And then measurements are all the measurements that were in the books when the development was built in 1970. I believe the development was built in 76 and 77.
That's all I have for now. Thank you.
Okay. Right, and one of the issues, the numbers that Mr. Bennett was reading off, that was sort of the updated zoning, and what that ended up doing, because the numbers were so big in terms of setbacks and everything else, and the building coverage was so small, it essentially made every single house in that area automatically out of compliance. So if you needed to do anything on your property at all, you pretty much had to go to zoning, which just increased the cost for and the difficulty and the length of the project. And that was one of the things we were looking to change, and I know Mr. Bennett was trying to, and I was in favor of what he was trying to do, was sort of like we would do almost like a blend of what was already in the area versus, you know, what it used to be, and kind of coming to a happy medium. And there obviously were some people that were not necessarily happy with that. And so I think the idea of just going back to what it was and what it had been for almost 30 years, everybody, you know, when people bought the homes, basically, this is what everything was. Let's just go back to that. It was changed sort of accidentally, you know, a few years ago, and we were trying to sort of make it into something a little bit hybrid kind of thing. Let's just go back to what it was originally. The easiest thing to do. So I appreciate your work on that. I guess one of the issues that has come up, a couple people have asked me about regarding the idea of like a duplex, the possibility of being able to build a duplex. Was there anything in the old, like original zoning that dealt with that?
No, there was nothing in the original LMR zoning district, but the MHR, that's where the duplexes come into play. But there's nothing in LMR for duplexes. The MHR, which the top of the development, and Pennsbury Woods is zoned that now. Mm-hmm. The duplexes could come into play there.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you. All right, I know some members from the public were here from the last meeting. I see them in the back. I don't know, is there an interest in public comment? See one hand. Is there a motion to open public comment?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Kim McCauley, Nottingham Drive. First of all, I want to say thank you. Thank you for taking the time to address this, Mr. Bennett. I think this is much more suitable and back to what we originally had wanted. I just want to clarify the duplex situation.
Okay.
So in accordance with what the changes will be, no one can build a duplex within that development? No.
I can show you that.
Okay. Okay. All right. That's all.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Bidding?
I also agree. I think this is more appropriate than the other approach. If you look at the setback requirements that are proposed as they were back in '07 in the older book, and you go through that neighborhood, the houses fit those setbacks. The setbacks aren't 40 feet, they're 25 feet.
Right.
the sheds that are existing, they're 5 feet, they exist, these numbers work. I think this is appropriate. It does eliminate the duplex. Only single-family homes are allowed in this district. So I think this is the right decision.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment? See no hands, or motion to close public comment?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so I guess at this point, would we be able to authorize
No,
Mr.
I
Bennett?
would think the appropriate procedure would be to direct the preparation of the proposed ordinance.
Okay.
Next time we have the proposed ordinance, which will then be advertised, will then be submitted to the
Planning
Planning
Commission,
Commission
right.
for the 30 days, and then we can move forward.
Okay, all right, so we would ask Mr. Bennett then to go ahead and start finalizing these so that we could look to hopefully advertise the first meeting in June. We have an extra week, I think, in May, so I think we have a little bit, gives you a little bit of time. So, is that the, I'm sorry, is that the pleasure of the board?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, well, was there a motion to that effect to direct Mr. Bennett to prepare that change the zoning for the first meeting in June?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Moved by Mr. Snipes, second.
Mrs. Zlotowski.
Mrs. Zlotowski. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Bennett. Appreciate it. Okay, item number 5 is consider RFP for township building renovations. One of the things, and we've had some discussions on this in the past, and members of the public have raised this issue, that the building we're currently in was never designed to be a township building. It essentially went through a couple different lives. There was a furniture store at one time, it was a car dealership at one time, and obviously it's turned into an office and office buildings and a municipal building. There are some concerns about the exterior appearance of the building. There's concerns about the atrium that's here in the building, the fact that it leaks. Just walking up and down this outside corridor, you can see areas where there's obviously water damage and leaks and things of that nature. And even inside the building, the various walls have been put up and taken down and moved and shifted. Different offices have been created and others sort of swallowed up by other offices, and it's created sort of a hodgepodge of a building. And so one of the things I wanted to take a look at and propose, after some discussion with Township Administration, as well as some fellow board members, about putting out what's called a request for proposals, basically, for architectural and engineering work on this building. Looking only at this stage, essentially, at studying the building. What can we do? How can we make it better? How can we make it fit the needs of our employees? How can we make it fit the needs of our tenants who rent space from us here? How can we make the police department a little bit better in terms of being able to use the space that they have, and maybe even trying to realign some things. Traffic pattern, everything is kind of on the table in terms of looking at this. And I'll just I'll highlight some of the things just that we'd be asking anybody who wants to take a look at this project, any professional organization that wants to look at this project. We're asking them to look at the efficiency of space, recommend any changes necessary to the interior dimensions and layout of the complex so as to maximize the utility of the space we have for employees and tenants. I'm not sure what other board members' thoughts are. My personal feeling is I don't think we necessarily need to expand the building's footprint at all. I think the building is big enough, but I think maybe there's a question about how the interior space is being utilized. I don't think we need to sort of add on anything or push, any big additions or anything like that.
Have we invited staff to participate in suggesting to us what they would like to see?
Well, that would be part of this, but getting the recommendations of those people and talking to them to find exactly what they need. Convenient public access is another issue. Recommendations for any changes necessary to the interior or exterior of the complex, including traffic access, to maximize the convenient access to members of the public using either the public or private offices. How many people have I've watched many times people pull into this driveway and they're not quite sure where they're going, and they park over here when they need to go to the police department, or they go around over the police department and they need to come back here. And is there something we can do? Is there something with the traffic pattern? Is there something with where the entrance is and where people need to go and how to utilize that space?
Mr. Chairman, may I? I have firsthand experience in this. A number of years back, they wanted to remodel the building that's used as the district court. And without asking my staff or me what we would like to have, they went and hired an architect. Nakarato, I think was the name, and for an incredible amount of money, he designed a vestibule that was 2 stories high, which would be a hellish maintenance problem, and no efficiency, added nothing to the court. And as I watched this horrible thing progress, I finally said, no, I'm not going to tolerate it. I think that the soldiers in the trenches need to tell the guys in the Pentagon exactly what they need. And I set about talking to my staff and designed my own court building, and it ended up being called the most efficient in the county. And it was because I asked the ladies who had to do the work exactly how they visualized their workstations, and we ended up with a good product. And it seems to me that this would be the best way to start with renovation of this building. Talk to the people who work in here every day without bringing professionals in. After a plan is developed, then if we want to hire an architect to go ahead and sketch it out or do anything beyond that, that makes common sense. But to begin with somebody who comes with a pie-in-the-sky plan that's going to cost us a fortune. And we had the same thing happen with a comprehensive plan once. A designer named Dick Cylinder was going to do that. We were in the very old building down in Fosington at the time, and he went first with doing all kinds of crazy changes. For example, we had Jorgensen Still up there in the Cabot Park. And he put a limit of 30 feet on the building heights. And Jorgensen Still, an existing brand new building, had a 32-foot height. And this fellow that was such a fancy schmancy designer didn't have the kind of common sense that was needed to do what we had to have. And that all got worked out when we went back and talked to the people. And I can remember meetings that lasted 2:30 and 3:30 in the morning while we were designing that, because U.S. Steel and all of the huge industries sent their attorneys to give input, and they watched everything that went on. And when they saw something that wasn't workable, they spoke up. And, you know, if we line up the hurdles in an orderly fashion, we can make progress that's valid progress that doesn't cost us the kind of monies that it would cost if we begin in the wrong time.
Okay. Well, actually, I agree with your point. And in fact, one of the things that's mentioned in the introduction in the paragraph for this request is that the board expects an explanation of how the people who will be bidding on this plan to involve township employees, tenants, and the community in the planning process. So that would have to be part of any proposal they would make, is how they're going to include the people in this building, tenants and the public employees.
Wouldn't building be last, though? You know, calling in the professionals to sketch what the employees want and need. Well, that's what I'm proposing.
Well, I think that's what's here, is the people would come in very much, essentially, I took as a model for this what we did for Biles Island, that we're looking for someone who's going to come in and is going to meet with the township, the people that are actually in this building. That's going to be one of the first step.
I did not see that in the proposal.
Yes, it's here.
Well, no, it's semantics. I'm talking about a common sense proposal that begins with the people that work in this building to tell us what they need.
And I agree. I think anybody that comes in here is going to have to do that.
Exactly what it says.
Yeah. So. Another point in this, just looking at energy efficiency, recommended changes to maximize the energy efficiency of the complex, as well as using green building materials and technology in the renovations. Aesthetics, recommended changes to the exterior or interior of the complex to enhance the aesthetics of the building. And maintaining operations. If we're looking at some kind of renovations, we're going to be asking anybody who's going to bid on this to give us an idea of how we can maintain, again, private tenants and public built offices, how we can maintain the operations we need to do if there are renovations going on. So that's going to have to be part of their plan as well. Again, very similar to what we have with Biles Island. Businesses are firms that are interested in looking at this work would come to a board meeting. Maybe we'd have a special meeting depending on how many people are interested, and we'd hear their proposals and get some ideas of things they've done before, and we would select one of those to take the lead. So just, again, identical to what we did with Biles Island. And the firm that we hired for Biles is an outstanding one, and I think they're doing an excellent job so far, and I think we're all happy with them, and so I figured to do the same process this time. I don't expect, obviously, this to me, I think would be taking it easily the rest of the year, just the process of finding someone and having them do some studies and things of that nature. If, depending on financial situation, we'll have that plan. If there's something we can do next year, fine. If financially we don't think it's viable, that's fine too. We still have the plan ready, and we can move on it when we feel we need to.
Mr.
That's my
Harvey.
ideas, but I want to hear from the board members and the public as well. Yes,
Well,
ma'am.
how often have we done something, even the people that came here from Nottingham tonight, we almost made a big mistake without starting at hurdle number 1 and progressing in an orderly fashion. We fixed things that didn't need fixed, or they got fixed wrong. Look at the bidding on the dawn to dusk thing. That was all messed up. That's what I'm hoping that we will do, and not commit those kinds of time-consuming, costly errors. And it doesn't say that really as I read it, or I would not have brought up the point. I'm trying to avoid any kind of costly mix-up, and it's sensible.
Yeah, and I agree. I think anybody that is going to come in here, and I'm concerned, again, we do have some private businesses that have offices here. I obviously don't want to leave them out of this mix. We want to find out what their issues are if they
That's
have them, what problems they have. I know in some cases there are problems with different walls were moved over time and different things were done, and now there's a room that doesn't necessarily have a heating duct because walls were moved and the HVAC wasn't corrected. So there's a hallway outside that's blazing hot, but the room right adjacent to it, because the wall was moved, doesn't necessarily have as much heat as it probably should have.
Well,
so
we're in
those are the
total
kinds of
agreement
things-
on that.
Those are the kinds of things that we need to take a look at. So other comments or questions from board members, and I'll open up to the public just regarding this draft which was sent out. Mr. Zupka?
I just want to make sure our staff who's here in and out every day for many years are involved with whoever might be doing this. But before we spend a single penny, I want to make sure, again, our staff is involved in it as well as the tenants and with the police department. I don't want to be spending anything and we're not really having any input in it.
No,
Meaning the staff.
Right. No, I think we're all in agreement on that, Mr. Zupka. Mrs. Zosky, any other comments or questions?
No, thank you. I've already made mine.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just in looking at the request for proposal under aesthetics, I hope we don't, and I'm sure this is sort of anticipated in here, but the landscaping, the appearance of the outside of the building, the flow of the traffic, but I don't see landscaping listed here in particular, but the appearance of the building is important. As people arrive, it creates a feel of you pull into a bare parking lot as opposed to something that has a little more aesthetic nature to it.
Sure, I can add that in, sure, including landscaping. All right.
That's all.
Mr. Dents?
Yes, this is something that, as long as I've been on this board, we've been talking about doing renovations to this building that are much needed. Andy Dell, every time he speaks, asks us when we're going to do it. We talked about the atrium in the back that is no longer an atrium. Now it's a corridor or a hallway. Everywhere you go into the code enforcement department. It's hard to believe that the water authority was actually in there as well, because they're jammed in there so tight. If you go over to the police, it's like walking through a habit trail. You have no idea how you got anywhere. You need an escort to get in and out. And it's just, as people moved out, tenants would move out, and the police needed more room or whoever, they would just expand and absorb this space. And it was, it was never designed properly for use as a township building. So this is something that we really need to get done, and I think is a great step.
Okay. All right. Any public comment? See no hands? Okay. So then, including just a change to where it says aesthetics, to the interior and exterior of the complex, including landscaping. I'll write that in there. Is there a motion then to direct the administration to send out this request for proposals for architectural and engineering work on the Falls Township complex?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Seconded.
Okay, motion made and seconded. All in favor?
What?
Aye.
When?
Aye.
I have a question on that motion.
Yes.
When are we going to get the input? It seems to me that we don't have the input from staff yet. Why are we hiring or sending out for proposals for architectural work?
We're not. Well, this will.
Well, that's what the motion is.
Yes, in looking for firms to come in, and then when they come in, part of our process of hiring them is that step one is for them to sit down and talk to staff.
Well, that's what I was seeking to avoid. I think we're premature. I think we talk to staff first. I think we have Mr. Gray indicate to every staff member in this building and the tenants that we are looking for ideas for improvement, and have them use specificity in telling us what their ideas are. After that, then let's get the professionals in here to cost out what those renovations might be. That way we will prevent making costly mistakes.
Yeah, well, I think we can probably do, well, 2 points. Number one, I think we can do that and this at the same time. There's nothing to preclude Mr. Gray from asking township staff and tenants from giving their ideas. But I also feel that professionals are going to know questions to ask that I wouldn't know, Mr. Gray wouldn't know, about use of space and other things that, you know, we can certainly hand them information, but they're probably going to need follow-up. So, I mean, I don't think we necessarily have to do step one and step two separately.
My suggestion involves having staff understand that their suggestions will be seriously considered, and then, after they conclude making all of the suggestions, give them a time limit. In 1 month, we want to know what your ideas are, and then schedule a motion such as the one we're trying to do now, because I'm not going to vote for it.
Okay. Well, I don't think we necessarily have to do first and second. I think we actually can do this, send out the RFP, and gather information simultaneously, so that whoever comes in and does this, we already have information to give them. And if they need to follow up with township employees, they can do that.
Mr.
So
Harvey.
I think you're seeing something.
No, I've done a lot of building in my time, and I'm a pretty good carpenter, believe it or not. And I know how not to make mistakes, because I've made all of them in my early years.
Okay. All right. Well, there was a motion to authorize the administration to put out this RFP with the one suggestion, or the one correction, including landscaping under aesthetics. Motion was made and seconded. Believe was let's poll the board. Let's do it that way instead, because we did voice vote instead of roll call. So,
Mr. Zupka?
Yes.
Mrs. Wislowski?
Now, this is for calling the architects to start their work.
This is for sending.
No, it's not.
This is for sending out an RFP. Anybody who's
Repeat the
interested.
motion, please. Repeat the motion.
This is directing the administration to send out a request for proposals from architectural and engineering work on the Falls Township complex.
My vote's no. I don't believe we're ready to do that yet.
All right.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Dents?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank
Now,
you.
let's just clarify one thing. We're not asking engineers to come back with drawings of a building.
Right.
We're asking them to come back with a proposal and how they're going to do the things outlined by Mr. Harvey,
Right.
including input from township employees, tenants, and the community.
Right.
We're not asking them to actually come back with a design.
I understand English, Mr. Dents, and I will tell you that I believe that we should give our staff a time limit for looking at the things, advising them that we will consider their suggestions seriously, so they'll put their heart into it, and then, when they say, we're ready, we've met the deadline, give them 2 weeks, give them 3 weeks, give them a month, and then we get the professionals to come in to talk to them.
And I have actually no problem asking Mr. Gray to just begin doing that. Just, you know, it's very simple to do. Ask department heads and employees just for their ideas. And we can start gathering that.
And get professionals in here?
Well, we can do the two things simultaneously, Mrs.
Well,
Wislowski.
again,
While
I
the
do
ad's
not
out there, we
agree
can be
with that.
gathering information, so.
We've
okay.
wasted too much money with mistakes and
All
getting
right.
the cart ahead of the horse.
Okay. All right, item 6 is consider authorization to advertise the 2011 road improvement program. Mr. Gray?
Yes, the board is asked to consider authorizing advertisement for the 2011 road program. The roads to be included for full-depth reconstruction are Winding Way, Vernon Road, Allendale Drive, Alden Avenue, and Rose Avenue. The roads to be included for mill and overlay include Penns Grant Drive, Justice Lane, Federal Lane, Musket Drive, Centennial Drive, a portion of Allendale Drive, Independence Drive, and the roadway to the dead end off of Independence Drive. T&M engineers will prepare the bid specs and complete the advertising requirements. And again, the board is asked to consider authorizing advertisement.
Okay. Comments or questions from board members regarding the 2011 road improvement program authorizing advertisement? Mr. Zupka?
No, I have none.
Mrs. Vislowski?
None.
Mr. Snipes?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Dents?
No.
Okay, and I have none. All right, any public comment needed? No? Okay, it's pretty standard operation here in the township. I'm sure the people on these roads, they've seen some of the roads near them getting worked on, and now they're getting a chance to have their own roads worked on as well. Right, is there a motion to authorize advertisement of the 2011 road improvement program?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right, public comment is next on our agenda. Okay, reminding residents we have a 5-minute maximum for speakers, 45 minutes overall. Okay, first name on the list is Roland Kinney.
Good evening, Roland Kenny, Falls Township. First, I'd like to thank Bill Smith. He's an officer over in Morrisville. Like I said to these thieves, murderers, robbers, molesters, they come Falls and do something, they can't get out. This young officer heard the radio, sent out that one of our banks was robbed in Falls Township. He took an initiative to go down to the Calhoun Bridge, and the description of the car going across the bridge, he stopped him in the middle of the bridge and arrested him. So thank you goes out to him. The board wanted me to talk about the trees. I ain't going to talk about them. Tired of them damn trees. I want to congratulate everybody that won yesterday and hope we can have a nice, peaceful one in November as we had yesterday. Wasn't that many people went out. It's a shame. It's a nice day, too. Other than that, let's go home and watch the game. Good night.
It's a win. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Lauren Giambaluca, is that right?
Excuse me, can I ask a question real quick?
It has to be on the microphone. Yeah, well, go ahead.
The issue that we're here for concerns all three of us.
Okay.
However, we know we only get 5 minutes. Is that 5 minutes going to go for the three of us, or would it be more
Well,
appropriate?
you did sign up separately. I mean, I'm assuming you're Dan Bechter and Will Abrega, is that
Yes.
right? Abrega? Okay. All right. So, I mean, obviously, you would be using 15 minutes anyway, so, okay, that's fine.
Would that be okay?
Yeah.
Okay, then I'll start out introducing myself. My name is Will Abrigo. To my left is Dan Bechter, and my right, Lauren Gambaluca. Over the last few years, during the summer months, we all have been employed by the township, specifically for the summer camp program. And as hiring procedure goes, after the season ends and during the winter months, if Mr. Reese, Mr. Bill Reese, who's the director of Parks and Recreation, if he asks you personally through letter to come back, you give him a response letting him know whether or not you would like to come back to the camp. All three of us had gotten that letter. We gladly responded that we wanted to come back for this 2011 summer season. As of April 5th, we had all received certified letters, the three of us, and only the three of us, that our services will no longer be needed through the summer camp. Personally, myself, I emailed Mr. Reese asking him, out of respect and in a professional way, I have the email also here, simply why were the three of us let go, especially on short notice. We've all given up, made sacrifices to take this job. Other opportunities we could have taken up on, we passed up believing we had this job during the summer. After I emailed Mr. Reese, I got an email instead from a Mr. Jordan Yeager from the Labor Council, who told me that it was against township policy to discuss personnel decisions. And we are all kind of confused on the fact that, one, if we're going to be terminated from a position, aren't we deserved a response and a reason why we're being let go? And after which, I mean, it's hard, everything's kind of jumbled up in the one thought right now, but after all the hard work we put in through this camp, everything we've done for the children, everything we've done for the township, why were we let go? Because we all believe that the decision was not a professional decision, but rather based on a personal matter between Mr. Reese and ourselves. And we're just here to the board right now to see if we can get some sort of response.
Were you reprimanded at any time for any reason?
Absolutely not.
Nothing.
It's actually in the one saying we could come back. It says right here, like, he wants us back. You were certainly one of the great counselors. Like, I have him if you guys want to check.
May I see it?
Yes. I also have Dan. I was a supervisor, head counselor, and Dan and Lauren were both in my staff in the 11-year-old age group. I also have an email from a parent of last year to Mr. Reese commending us on the job we had done throughout the summer and as well as the summer camp talent show, which the three of us were personally in charge of running. And I have that email as well if you would like to see that.
Yes, I would.
Mr. Reese had personally, on the last day of camp, called me to his office to give me this email. I have copies for everyone.
You're residents of Falls, all of you?
Yes.
How many years have you been, or how many summers have you been doing that?
This would be my third. This would
have been my 5th year.
This would be his 2nd year as a head counselor too.
You do what?
Same with him.
And she would be a 5th year returning counselor too.
You know what sickens me? My name's on this. I don't want him using our stationery. I don't care. He's not going to use my name to do things unless I know
we all
about it.
believe, honestly, that we had a fallout with his son, and we had one. Oh no, not personal. But
Well, no, but I can tell you there are a couple things. Obviously, we're Mr. Yeager, obviously, as labor counsel. Mr. Rudolph, who's a solicitor for the township, will support this. Personnel decisions are things we cannot comment on in public. So having said that, but what I can tell you is that this was not a decision Mr. Reese made based on a personal level. I can assure you of that. This was something he did for the administration. Supported his decision, and it was supported by the Labor Council. Other than that, I can't go into it. I don't want, obviously Mr. Reese isn't here to discuss anything, but I can let you know it wasn't anything personal.
we're just kind of confused because from December 8th to April 5th when we got our letters.
Right.
And these like this letter I had to sign to get it in the mail.
Right.
There was one email sent from all three of us to Mr. Reese saying that we were excited to come back and we were like basically we knew we had a job coming out of that, and like we turned down internships, we turned down other jobs because this is a great summer job. Like it's full time, like it's a great summer job.
And I understand it's they can't discuss personnel decisions. However, for these months that I was in school, I believed I had a summer job.
Right.
I got 1 month between when I got the certified letters asking me not to come back to my week of finals and to come back now. I'm on summer vacation now, left scrambling for a job. And I've been put in, I know I'm only 20 years old, but I've been put into a financial burden. This money that I make, which is significant money, I won't make in any other organization that I get a job from unless I'm hired there as a supervisor. And I just think, I understand, like I said, if there's nothing you can do to give us an explanation, I understand that, but I just think this is rather unethical.
Well,
young lady, do you have exhibits to give us as well?
It's just a letter that we received on April 5th telling us that they no longer needed our service.
We don't have a copy of that here, do we?
Well,
I'd like one. And I'm willing to sit down and meet with you privately.
That would be great. I'd much appreciate that.
Would you like all of our letters for that? Because we all have the same exact letters.
Well, if they're repetitious, I won't need
Yes,
them
they
if
are.
you
They're all
all got the same letter.
Okay. I understand, obviously, and I appreciate the sort of abruptness of everything, and I understand why, why you're here. The limit, obviously, on us is that what we're able to say and not say.
Right.
What I can promise you is, obviously, Mr. Visosky's promised to meet with you. I'll communicate with our solicitor and also labor attorney and find out exactly, what kind of.
If I may,
Sure.
It's not something that can be discussed at an open meeting.
Yeah,
That's not to say that it's not something that can be discussed in the proper forum.
Okay.
And I think that's what the chairman is saying.
All right.
I want to meet with you first and get your side of it, and then I will go to the professionals who are party to the decision, and then I will decide what I should do after that. But you may be sure I'm accustomed to mediation. I've done that all my life.
Can I just make one more comment?
Sure.
And I understand you said that you can guarantee that it was made on a professional decision rather than personal. And I don't mean any disrespect, but how can you prove that?
Once again, it's nothing that can be discussed here. There's a proper time for it.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Don't go away. I'm going to meet with you tonight.
Yes, ma'am.
You have time, take a seat.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe Kraus?
I got a few things here tonight we'll talk about. How much money has been totally spent so far since this boat ramp's been created?
Mr. Sullivan, well, I guess what was the overall budget for the boat ramp? I mean, it's nearing completion, so obviously we're going to be close to that figure. Is it 1.1?
This is with the add-ons, too.
The original bid cost is $1.1 million.
Say again, Mr. Sullivan?
$1.1 million.
Okay, and we're pretty close to completion of the boat ramp.
We've
within-
paid the contractor all but about $150,000 of that money.
Okay. All right.
How many residential homes are located in Falls Township? What's the figure?
13,000?
About 11,000.
13, Mr. Gray saying 13,000.
Okay. How many residents have boats that are registered in Pennsylvania that need a boat ramp?
I don't know that number.
That's something we really need to investigate. Okay, because I'll tell you what, I think it's more than 25, maybe it's more than 100 to 1. Why did we build this boat ramp? That's a good question. Okay. I like these, somehow get back in touch with at the next board meeting to find out exactly, because they, you got to go through the state to have your boat registered. And all they got to do is pull up which ones are in Falls Township.
Right.
And that's it. And then we can find out what's the ratio between the people and that, because down the road, this is all an expense. Okay?
Well, I can give you a little bit of an idea. Actually, it's just a thought that occurred to me. We just did some work with the boat permits for the township park, correct? How many, just give some refunds out, how many people had registered boats for the township park, Mr. Gray?
I think by the time we started the process of refunding, there was about 40 to 50 permits we had issued.
All right, so we're 40, 50, and those are just boats that would only be allowed in township park, so they're not motorized.
Right.
Or they have small electric motors.
Right.
That's not counting, obviously, all the people that
But, some of those people may also have a larger boat.
They might, sure. I'm not really sure how we can go about finding.
Well, they
How
have a
many people-
classification, I think, with the state
Yeah, but they
on
don't,
the size of the boats.
They don't register with us in terms, obviously, if someone registers a boat, they don't necessarily register here in Falls
No,
Township.
but at the
It's
same
state.
time as the state should have a record, and they should be able to get back
Yeah.
in touch with you guys to come up with a figure
We can
for
look,
that.
I'm not sure if they categorize it by municipality, we can look, I guess. But because a person might do it they might live in, you know, the what's called the Marsville section of Falls, and it wouldn't come up as Falls Township, or how do we know if it's Marsville or if it's something
But
else?
I'm
We
going to
can-
tell
I
you
mean,
what
we'll have
it's
to
going to
see.
be.
Let's see if we can
Look at
figure
how
it
many
out.
houses you just said are residents are here.
Mhm.
And, you know, you can drive down the street now, and a lot of people, they store their boats, but there's how many places that they do store boats at? A lot of people have boats, and they belong to the Penn Warner Club.
Mhm.
Okay. All right, next thing. What's the expenses for Falls Township for the soccer fields? What expenses does Falls Township pay for the lighting? Sometimes, you know, I go by on Route 13, there's nobody on the fields, and the lights are on.
Soccer club pays for the lighting, I believe, don't they?
Say, it's not club pays for lighting.
They pay totally for the lighting,
Yeah, yeah.
and they pay totally for the repairs?
Well, I mean, obviously, there's parking. That's where it gets difficult because we obviously have people down there. You know, how do you park guards versus the maintenance people that are down there? How long are they down there? How many hours per day? And it's not an easy thing to quantify. If we have somebody who's, you know, doing maintenance, doing how often is a park guard in that park compared to another park, and et cetera. I don't know how we could quantify
Do
it.
these soccer clubs originate in Falls Township?
Yes, in fact, one of the founders is sitting just
Okay.
behind you.
Because, you know, there's a lot of empty soccer fields available right now. St. Joseph the Worker,
Yeah.
they have soccer fields.
Mhm.
I think St. John's has a soccer field. Immaculate Conception has soccer fields.
Mhm.
Maybe we could move some of them to them, because I'll tell you what, all those people would be glad to have somebody use their fields. And we could use, because soccer's not a year-round sport. You don't play it in the wintertime when it's snowing,
No, that's pretty much the only time they don't play it.
right? Okay? Something to think about.
Okay.
All right? Okay. Bellis Island, okay? Has the township been approached by any casino or of that nature in the island?
No.
Why can't the Bucks County Zoo go there?
I don't think anybody said they couldn't.
Okay. Why don't we look into that? Maybe we could bring people from the Bucks County Zoo at our next meeting.
Where are we talking about?
The Biles Island.
Oh.
Well, I know there is supposed to be at some point in the near future a public meeting for people that want to come out and talk about ideas for Biles Island, and you know, if you want to.
Well, I think, you know,
So that would be open to
again,
anybody, and certainly they could.
you know, you said about the Cape May Zoo and all, it's the same thing. It's a nonprofit organization.
Right.
They get grants to do improvements.
Mhm.
Okay? So it's not like it's going to be actually a cost factor for the township or a maintenance factor. The one thing you have to look at with zoos is once the sun goes down, the animals go to sleep.
Mhm.
So you don't need, you know, additional lighting. You don't,
Right.
They would have to have their own security and everything like that. Wouldn't even affect using our personnel to do it. They would have to have their own needs, and that's what they use down at Cape May.
Yeah, well, I would encourage you, I mean, when the next Biles Island public meeting is held, there was one we tried to hold in February, and it was held, but unfortunately, it was the weather was pretty poor, and the turnout wasn't great, and so I asked them to kind of wait till spring and do another one. And so that's something I would encourage you to come out and take a
Okay.
look, because that's what they want to hear. They want to hear from people that, you know, hey, how about, because I think at that meeting we had people ask about, you know, softball fields, and what about, you know, fishing and things like that. So we're interested in hearing.
When is that meeting going to come about?
We haven't scheduled it yet.
Okay.
We have to get back in touch with Mrs.
Because, you know, you have an engineer looking in, you know, for this island right now, right? Maybe we should have the meeting for this island soon, too.
Okay.
Last thing. Okay. Well, there's two things. Okay. When they go about doing this renovation in this building,
Mhm.
okay, I really think you need to look into the turbines, the wind turbines that the Eagles use down at their stadium, put them into this building with the renovation.
Yeah.
Because then you guys can sell your electricity back to Philadelphia Electric.
Yeah, that is something that, you know, the proposal is we would ask them to take a look at alternative energy, whether it's, we've
Right.
had people come and talk about geothermal, you've talked about wind, but that's part of the process.
I would say probably that's the most, right now,
Mhm.
that system that they're going to be using down at the Eagle Stadium is going to be probably the best one of them all three ones.
Right.
And
Okay.
it might be the easiest one to maintain because, again, you got a tall building, you got a lot of, if you're on the top of this building, you can see for miles and
Right.
miles.
Right.
And I asked one time before about, like, is there anything for housing or business district is for can they put something like this at their locations? Is there any restrictions or anything?
I don't know off the top of my head what our zoning talks about in
Yeah.
terms of.
Can we find out about
windmills.
that?
I guess we can look into it and just
Because,
see
you
what our
know,
zoning
we
says.
could have
I don't
maybe get
know.
residents start doing this and selling,
Right.
selling their electricity
Right.
back
Yeah.
to Philadelphia Electric.
Yeah, I don't know if we have anything in our zoning about that, but yeah, we'll certainly take a look. Okay?
And, oh yeah, the bridge that goes nowhere. Okay, there was this proposed bridge to hook up Tyburn Road with New Jersey.
Mhm.
Okay? Now, they're spending all this money repairing the bridges and everything.
Mhm.
And soon, and not too far in the distant future, the landfill's gonna close. Why aren't we working on getting the bridge done? What's the hang-up with that? Is it a federal thing? Is it a state thing? Because actually, it's federal funding. We'll probably be funding that bridge.
I couldn't tell you. I don't know how much would be federal, how much would be state, Mr. Kraus. I have no idea.
But Tyburn Road's a state road, so should I be going to the state and ask them?
Don't know. I mean, you're going over a bridge. I don't know. I don't going over a river. Obviously, I don't know where the federal.
Because
government
I'll tell you what, a construction of a bridge will bring
Sure.
jobs in, union jobs in,
Mhm.
things of that nature.
But-
And they take a while to build.
Yes, they do, and they take a while to plan. So.
Well, they already did the
So-
plans. That's the whole thing. It's been planned, but
Okay.
it's never been implemented. And that's a good way to get people back to work.
Yep. All right. Thank
That's
you very
it.
much. Appreciate it. Ray Erickson.
That was 10 minutes.
Oh, he's not the only one who's speaking.
That's all right.
Ray Erickson from Ferris Hills. I went to the polls yesterday hoping to vote for Mrs. Vislowski for school board director. And lo and behold, looking at the Republican side and Democrat, I'm a registered Republican. I did not find your name there. Were you on the ballot?
Yes, I was.
The polling place where I went, your name was not on the ballot. I just
Well-
want to say that in public because I was under the assumption that you were on the ballot, and I went there to vote for you for school board. And
You vote?
I voted at the Falls Township Senior Center.
That's Region 3.
The
That's
booth to the
Region
right.
2.
Pardon me?
That's Region 3. She ran in Region 2.
Oh, my
No.
apology then. My apology.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was Kridgenpowski
All right,
there.
thank you very much, Mr. Dents. So that clears that up. I was hoping to be able to vote for you, but I'm sorry.
Well, I saw an irregularity. I took a senior to the polls, and I'm going to report it to the Board of Elections because it was definitely something that was not permitted to have an inside poll worker go in to the voting booth with someone. They can take someone to help them, but this fellow was reading names out loud and was doing, suggesting and telling the senior how to vote. And it happened to be the 91-year-old lady that I
My
took to
apology,
the polls.
I wasn't aware of the regionalization regarding school board.
That's okay. They scattered it for the teachers a few years back, and they mixed the Lower Makefield area. You know, there are four regions in Lower Makefield that belong to Pennsbury Region 3, and there are 8 regions in Falls that belong to Region 3, and you happen to be in that one. I think you live in the H section, do you not?
Yes, yes.
Okay, you're in that one. You used to vote over at the Penryn School, right on Olds Boulevard, South Olds Boulevard.
The old Fairless View, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And secondly, the water tower controversy, were there communication antennas on that water tower prior to its demolition?
No.
No.
We're not. The existing Fairless Hills water tower, does that belong to the Falls Township Water Authority?
Lower Bucks Joint Municipal Authority.
Okay, was that stacked full of?
No, that's the Fairless Hills one is Topha's.
No, I'm sorry, you said Fairless Hills. I thought you meant the one we tore down. That was Lower Bucks.
The one that's still standing, the classic
That's
design of a water
Topha's.
tower.
Township of Falls
That
owns
is,
that one,
that's
yes.
Topha, okay. And in regard to Topha itself, as I recall, the controversy in regard to going back to the authority was in order to pay for or to have residents outside of Falls Township who receive township water be able to bill them. And the way that the authority was set up before, when it was a Falls Township whatever type of organization, they weren't able to bill outside of Falls Township. What does anybody know the status in regard to billing outside of Falls Township for
The issue was that if you're an authority, you're not specific to one municipality. The Township of Falls Authority serves people not just in Falls. They serve people in Lower Make, in Marsville, Middletown, I believe, as well. And so when this board controlled the water authority, since we're a board elected by Falls Township only, in order for us to have to raise rates, and it was always because whoever we bought water from or whoever we paid to take the sewage away would raise the rates, and we obviously would have to raise the rates to compensate and stay even. We would have to go to the Pennsylvania Utility Commission in Harrisburg. We'd have to spend tens of thousands of dollars to explain why we needed to do this. 18 months later, they would tell us that we're allowed to raise our rates. And in the meantime, the rates from our suppliers and customers would have had to gone up another time, and we'd have to reapply all over again. As an independent authority, if costs go up, if Lower Bucks Joint raises their prices and TOFA is forced to have to raise their prices, they can do it immediately without having to spend money on legal fees, without having to go to the PUC, without having to wait a year, 18 months to do that. Because they're an independent authority, they're not just Falls Township. Theoretically, they can represent anybody from any of those communities.
Oh, so everybody outside of Falls Township are in line with Falls Township residents in regard to the
Correct.
water rates at
Yeah.
this point. All right,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Go down and read the authority minutes. It's quite enlightening.
Edgar Latuma? Is that right? Right? I did that right? Okay.
Yes. I was a month ago, I think about talking about the soccer fields, and I appreciate Ms. Belaski, what she say. It's true. I was shocked now, found that it cost $1 million to build the
1.1.
ramp.
Right.
And spending nothing in the soccer fields. Like Ms. Belaski said, we have 40,000 people in Falls. I just read a paper a few weeks ago. How many people we have from Falls, we have boats here. How many people are going to benefit with that? I told you, you in the fields all the time, it's 400, 500, 600 kids playing there. The gentleman before say about the lights. The club, we pay the lights.
Right.
We keep on only until 9 o'clock. That's it. After that, the park is closed. Right. And the township don't spend anything in the lights. We pay, the club pay the lights. Only I want to see if the board decide or talking anything about fix the soccer fields. Only I want to find out that if they're going to do anything, because next month I think we're planning to come, a lot of people, talk to you guys. That is, I was here last month and I tried to see if you're going to do anything, you talk anything about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've had conversations with Mr. Sullivan, and we're gonna meet with representatives of the Falls Soccer Club and start taking a look at how we can, what we can do, how expensive it's going to be, and in some cases, I think it might just be that we take one field at a time or a couple fields at a time.
Yes.
Just do whatever we can do, strip them down, just start over, basically rebuild them, and then obviously they're going to have to sit for a while. That's why we need to talk to you in terms of, or your organization, in terms of doing that in a way that doesn't completely.
Yeah, we're thinking that, like you say, maybe 1 or 2 fields in the town we can use in other fields in between. Because believe me, I ref every week there, and I coach there.
Right.
I'm afraid to run, I'm getting old, but the kids, every week, somebody get injured there.
Yeah.
Because the ankle, the knees, because it's so many holes.
Right.
We're not going to do just patching. It's the kids, it's our kids here. My 3 kids play all the time there, but now they are grown up, they don't play but I still coach and still belong to the club. And I'm looking to improve that.
So when the season, the spring season ends, what, mid-June or so? Is it?
It's another 2 more, June 5th is the last games.
June 5th. All right, so let's say after, we'll start scheduling a meeting at some point with Mr. Tallarico and other Falls Soccer Club people, Mr. Latuma, with Mr. Sullivan, and sometime in mid-June after their season's over, we can start sitting down and talking about what we need to do down there. We can go out and take a look and try and figure out a way to do it without completely. Obviously, we don't want to take all the fields away from you at once, but we can do this, a couple this year, a couple next year, a couple. And then see how.
And the club is able. We can talk that because the club has money. We'll be able to give us something.
That's not an issue. I mean, you
Yeah,
guys,
I know it's a public
you do a
part.
lot of stuff anyway. So
It's a public part for that. I don't want to involve the
Right.
club. But only I asking is for the kids, the
Sure.
Falls Township.
Absolutely.
Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Al Wilson.
Good evening. Just a couple clarifications, if I could. You spoke about the no wake zone in the New Jersey State Police patrol the river. Do they have jurisdiction on the PA side?
You have Mr.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
They have jurisdiction over the entire river.
The whole thing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. And the other thing I'd like to do is I'd like to thank the voters who had the confidence to vote for me in the election. And I noticed in my opponent's literature that they are tired of the wasteful spending here, and I believe they're guys that you supported who ran against me. And so obviously they mustn't agree with what you're doing. So I'd like to see if we're going to get rebates like Teletown, or are we going to get some $1 million sidewalks? And the thing with TOFA, and again, I'd like to ask your solicitor, should something go bad at TOFA, the township's ultimately responsible?
No.
They appoint all the people to TOFA?
It's separate, distinct.
We appoint people to TOFA, yes. I mean, what do you mean? You say if things go bad, what is it? I'm not understanding what you mean.
Well,
Did
should
go
they run out of
bankrupt or
money?
something,
Because they're
or
spending a lot of money redoing that building.
No.
Should,
It's
who
separate.
would that fall to? Who would that fall on?
Entity itself.
I'm sorry?
The entity itself, the authority would be obligated.
Even though they appoint, it wouldn't fall back on them?
Correct.
Okay, then it's different than Bristol Township.
No, it's not.
Well,
Unless Bristol Township,
their solicitor said it would.
whatever, unless their township agreed to some debts, it is not their obligation.
Okay, thank you. Good
Okay,
night.
thank you. Dorothy Kozlowski.
Well, I've got a myriad of things to say. I'm going to save something for board comment time. But I do want to answer Norma Lindblom, since I believe that is she's sitting in the last row. She appeared at the meeting just before the election and implied that I am a liar because I didn't finish any of the terms to which I was elected. That was her statement. And I thought about a thing that my father used to say: blessed is she who knows not and knows not that she knows not. Pray for her, because she cannot lead you. Blessed is she who knows and knows that she knows, because she understands. Follow her. Now, we'll begin with my 1971 election to the Pennsbury School Board. I took my oath of office in December 1971, and I served until the public elected me to the Falls Township Board of Supervisors in 1973. I took my oath of office on the first Monday in January 1974. I was required to resign from the Pennsbury School Board because it is illegal to hold both of those offices. And I really didn't seek either one of them. I did not want to be an elected official, and I still don't. Now, then I served on the Falls Township Board of Supervisors, Mrs. Lindblom, until my husband came down with leukemia. And he became very, very ill. And I realized that my place was home, not in the public forum. So I went home to take care of John. I was just a few months shy of my term finishing in 1979. Then I was elected as a district justice, and I served in that capacity for the full term, and I became an appointed senior justice and went around the state when district justices had heart attacks and things which required another judge to come in and handle the caseload. And I did that until I retired from that. So it is incorrect to say that I resigned from all the positions to which I've been elected. I did only that which was required of me legally. And I'm hoping that you'll forgive me because my husband had leukemia. That was unavoidable. I had to leave, and I would do so again. And as far as my absence from this board with a gavel being placed by my name tag, and my not having the opportunity to defend myself on that, I had 2 heart attacks while I was in Florida. I was snowbound down there. I went on November the 10th this past year, and I planned to stay only 2 weeks. I went down to inspect a mobile home, which I had bought at a bargain rate, and I was fixing it up. I mentioned earlier in this meeting, if you were listening, that I'm not a bad carpenter. So I went down to assess what was needed to make that home habitable. And while there, the first blizzard hit up here, and I was trapped in Florida. I bought a plane ticket to fly to Philadelphia. That flight was canceled. In another week, I bought another plane ticket, and that flight was canceled. And I kept getting bumped until 3 flights were canceled. On the 4th flight, I was able to fly to Philadelphia. I was picked up by a friend, and I had 7 days to get a decision on if or not I would run for supervisor or for school board or just retire. Well, I'm feeling ready to retire, but I find myself trapped. I asked people not to vote for me this time, and I ended up being a candidate for school board for November. I'm thinking about what to do. I don't know the state of my records that are down in Florida. I'm writing books. There are 12 books in partial stages of completion. I don't know what's left of my records, but I still have a very good memory, and those books will be produced. Now, if you have any quarrel with that, I'd like to hear it now, because I don't like you calling me a liar when I tell the truth. I live by the West Point Honor Code. I do not lie, I do not cheat, and I do not steal. And I don't tolerate those who do. And my time is up, and thank you very much. Next time you want to make a fool of yourself, just come on out to the meeting and attack me again.
Okay, Margaret Fairchild?
Good evening. I have a proposal to make here. I'm representing the LaRouche Political Action Committee. And the proposal that I'm making is something that we're doing at local elected bodies all over the country, because although it's not a local issue per se, it is something which profoundly affects your constituents and every hamlet and town in this country. It's a proposal that this board would pass a resolution to the Congress in support of a bill that was introduced into the Congress last month by Marcy Kaptur of Ohio, which is called the Return to Prudent Banking Act, House Resolution 1489. And it is a resolution to restore a law that was in effect for 66 years and is known as Glass-Steagall. It was based in 1933, the Banking Act of 1933. Technically, what it does is to separate speculative investment functions from commercial banking. And the importance of this just can't be overstated, because since it was repealed, there has been an absolute orgy of speculation by Wall Street and others using the funds of depositors in commercial banks in this country, which has led to the blowout 2 years ago, and which has led to the bailouts, which most people don't realize the bailouts didn't end with TARP. They're in the at this point in the range of somewhere between 23 and 27 trillion dollars that is being sucked out of American taxpayers and out of every institution in the country to bail out the bad gambling bets of speculators. And this is what's actually causing the high gas and food prices, which obviously are being paid by people here. And it's really, we're on the verge of a huge blowout. So the idea of getting Glass-Steagall restored, which has, by the way, bipartisan sponsorship in the Congress, is to put a stop to the bailouts, a stop to the hyperinflation, and enable the country to be freed up to invest in building infrastructure, restoring manufacturing, and creating jobs. And so the idea is, rather than bailing out the speculators, we should bail out the states and cities. We should not be shutting down police and fire in our cities and, you know, cutting Medicare and Social Security and not being able to fund anything that's needed for the people for these bailouts. I have some material here which I provided for all of you, and anybody in the audience who wants some, I have extras, including the report from, well, the copy of the bill, and an article here from Bloomberg News about the way that the city of Erie, for instance, was ripped off by J.P. Morgan and Company. And this also, I think something similar happened in Bethlehem, and one of the results of all this, you know, this was through speculation in certain types of derivatives. One of the results of this was the, you know, they lay off teachers, they lay off a lot of city workers and so forth. Taxes are raised. I also have a copy here of the conclusion of the Financial Crisis Inquiry Report, which was a government commission from a couple years ago, which recently released its report. Phil Angelides, the head of the commission, is the former treasurer of California, and he does cite the bailouts and as a major feature of the financial collapse, a major cause of it, and he cites, he says this was man-made. This crisis was man-made. It didn't just happen. It didn't have to happen. The bailouts didn't have to happen. It could have, it could have been prevented. Neil Barofsky, the head of the TARP, which the people may remember was the original bailout, the Troubled Asset Relief Program, recently said the bailouts are up to about 27 trillion and counting. Trillions, 27 trillion. So the idea with Glass-Steagall is that we can sort out legitimate debts from bad debts, write off all the bad gambling debts, and reorganize the system and create credit to invest in infrastructure and manufacturing so we can create jobs and a revenue base. So the reason I'm bringing this up to you is that what we need is a lot of municipalities to put a lot of pressure on Congress.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for sharing the information. Obviously, it's you've given us just the bill, just placed it on here on our table this evening, so I haven't had a chance to read through it thoroughly. I'm assuming that other board members wouldn't necessarily want to pass a motion supporting it if we haven't actually gone through it and read it. You know, I'm familiar with the Glass-Steagall, and I agree with one of your points anyway, which is that the repeal of Glass-Steagall in 1999 by a bipartisan, you know, approval of both Republicans and Democrats was certainly part of a major part of the problem. So I do agree with that, and obviously everybody understands the issue in terms of the finances of the country and the state we're in, and tough decisions having to be made, and would encourage people to get as involved as they can and look up as much information as they can and get educated. And obviously you said you have some materials for anybody that might be interested here, so I appreciate you bringing that to our attention, and I'll ask board members to take a look at this, and if we want to ask our congressman to support this, we can do that at our next meeting, or even just personally make a phone calls to him. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Those are all the names we have on the list. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? See no other hands. Okay. All right. Next item on our agenda are the minutes from May 3rd, 2011. Let's see. Comments or questions regarding the minutes, Mr. Zupka?
Yeah, the last line of the minutes.
The very last line.
Very last line. It wasn't 5-0. It was 3-2.
Okay. The adjourn, okay. Mr. Snipes?
No changes, Mr. Chairman. Excellent minutes as usual, Mrs. Pullen. Thank you for your work.
Mr. Dents?
No, none.
And I have none. Is there a motion to accept the minutes as amended?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
And second, motion made and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No. No.
No? Okay. All right. Engineers report, which is for April, dated May 13th. Mr. Sullivan, highlights here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The boat ramp is substantially complete. All the docks are in place. The lighting has been installed. Transformer that will provide power to the lights has been installed. The only thing that remains to actually turn the lights on is to have the electrical connection made to the power source. And we hope that all that will be completed by the end of next week, which gives us possibly the opportunity of actually opening the ramp for Memorial Day weekend. That's what we're trying for. So hopefully that'll be the case. The 2010 road program is moving along very well. All streets have been paved with binder course. The wearing course has not been installed yet. Contractor is now actively replacing sidewalk along all the streets in the program. And that should all be wrapped up probably middle toward the end of June. That should all be done.
Okay.
That's all I have.
All right. Comments or questions for Mr. Sullivan? Mr. Zipka?
No, I have none.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes, I actually was not able to attend. I was away this weekend, was not able to attend the opening for the newly renovated Pleasanton Library. I wondered if were you there, Bob?
Yeah, Mr. Dents and I were both there.
How did it go?
It went very well.
How does the building look? I have not been over yet.
Fantastic.
Yeah, really. The outside, I was going to mention it during my board comment, but the outside of the building is really it's beautiful. It's all new lighting. The roof has been fixed, painted on the outside. Steps have been fixed. The lighting on the inside is very nice. It's not sort of the real harsh artificial kind of stuff. Renovations, I think, to the shelving and the upstairs.
They renovated the shelves.
Right, the upstairs, which actually for a while was the auditorium for, the Pennsbury School District for a long time. Stages and things like that is completely open now, and so it's they're looking to actually rent it out as space for people that want to have meetings there or do different things there. So, and did a ribbon cutting just before the rain started, so it was good timing. So a lot of good people put a lot of hard work in, including Mr. Sullivan. Mr. Gray did a tremendous amount of work securing the grants. He deserves a lot of credit. The board obviously was very much in favor, all of us, of doing the renovations. Jennifer Stark, who is a historic architect, who was there as well, who worked a lot on the project. So Mr. Representative Galloway sent one of his chief of staff there. He wasn't able to make it himself. So very nice event. Mr. Dents and I were very happy to be there and represent the board.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, sure.
That's all I have.
Okay. Mr. Dents, any comments on the engineer's report?
No comments.
Okay. And I have none. Any public comment needed? Questions? One hand, motion to open public comment.
So moved.
Second?
Seconded.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Erickson, this is the engineer's report for the township.
I happen to live on Waltham Road, and the curbs and the road was done, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. About 6 or 7 months ago, somebody had put some orange paint about in the middle of the road. It looked like it was engineering work. Are you familiar with that at all?
I'm sorry, Mr.
On
Erickson.
Waltham Road in Fairless Hills. Was there a continuing aspect of was that the water department or something going on in regard to somebody had spray painted? It looked like professional type of markings.
Right.
Did you remember what color it was?
Orange?
Orange usually is in the middle of the street.
Not in the middle, no, it's closer to the sidewalks.
All right, that's usually some kind of communication markout.
Oh,
Orange means
communication.
cable line or
Okay,
telephone
okay.
lines.
Okay.
And
I don't know of anything that we're actively doing there right now. So
Okay.
maybe
Okay,
someone
okay.
called in for some kind of.
And some the asphalt close to at least the manholes around 212 to 213 on Waltham Road, it seems to be broken in the center, and there's a couple sections where the asphalt itself is About half an inch separation of the asphalt.
All right, we'll take a look at that.
All right, thank you.
Let's ask Mr. Gray to 212, 213, have Public Works go out and take a look. Maybe they can.
In terms of undermining of, if the water streams down into those cracks, it might widen up during the winter when it freezes and stuff.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? See no hands. Is there a motion to close public comment?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion to accept the engineer's report dated May 13th, 2011.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Seconded.
Second, motion made and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, next on the agenda is the bill list for May 18th. Bill list for this month is in the amount of $3,368,009.76. Of that, about $1.3 million is payroll and health insurance for township employees. Another $1.4 million is contributions the township makes every year to the 3 fire companies, $100,000 each, as well as to the 2 rescue squads that cover Falls Township and the library itself. Also for the boat ramp, the road program, and the elevator renovations, which I forgot to ask Mr. Sullivan about, which are ongoing here in this building. The elevator to go up second floor has not been working well for a couple decades. So that's nearing completion now, that project?
That should be complete by Friday, and they have an inspection scheduled for Monday morning.
Okay, good news. Good news. And obviously, all of that money you put in essentially contributions to rescue squads and fire in the library, the elevator, boat ramp, road program, salaries, and health insurance, and that's $2.7 million out of the $3.3. So, under $600,000 goes to various things. And also we have, and I get a chance to calculate, post-retirement health benefits to police officers. I don't know how many of them there are. I didn't get a chance to count how many there are.
Approximately 42.
42. So about 42 retired police officers receive post-retirement health benefit checks twice a year. May and December, is that right?
May and November.
May, November.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that's a large part of the budget. So comments or questions on the bill list? Mr. Subica?
None.
Mr. Snipes?
None, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Dents? Nope. And I have none. Motion to pay the bills, the amount of $3,368,009.76.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Seconded.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oh,
No.
no. Okay. All right. Manager comment. Mr. Gray?
Yes, the township has an employee handbook currently in place. From time to time, some additions are made. One item not addressed, but for consideration by the board tonight, is a social media policy. This covers social media sites including MySpace, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, personal websites and blogs. Some of the guidelines include if you're communicating using social media and mention the township, you must expressly state that the views on the site are yours alone. Also, you are not authorized to speak on behalf of the township. Do not engage in any conduct prohibited in the workplace. You may not share any information that is confidential. And the township logo and letterhead not be used without the permission of the township itself. So these are just some of the highlights included in this policy. At this time, the board's asked to consider including this in the employee handbook.
Okay. It's a sign of the times. As we know, more and more people connected to various social network sites on the internet. I think probably people will remember earlier, I think it was just in the wintertime maybe, teacher from, I think it was Central Bucks West, or Central Bucks High School District, who had a blog and stupidly made some disparaging comments about some students, and promptly got herself in a lot of hot water, as she should have. And I'm saying that as a teacher. And that's kind of the thing. Obviously, if you're representing a municipality, a government, it could obviously raise a lot of issues. And so this would be something that we just would make our employees aware of. This would be doing sort of a workshop with this for our employees, so they would be aware of this.
We would distribute this to all the employees.
Okay.
And they could include it with their employee handbook that they currently have.
Okay. Yeah, maybe we should see if our labor council can do something too, in terms of just, a group at a time, maybe just sort of sit down with them, go over some of the things,
Sure.
the basic ideas of things to be careful of. Comments or questions from board members? Mr. Zupka?
Thank you. Well, I think it's a good start with the way technology has changed and such, but I think maybe, well, I shouldn't say every few months, but as things evolve or we think of other things, we might have to keep going back and revising and adding to it, because well, it's not really a new technology, but people have found so many ways of abusing this. And frankly, I don't text, I don't want to tweet, whatever. I want to deal with somebody, I want to talk to them face to face, and that's it. But too many people say things they absolutely regret. But I think as time goes on, anything we think of, or Mr. Gray, or even our staff thinks of, that maybe should be included, just to not just protect ourselves, but protect our own staff for something happening. We should just keep going back and revisiting this. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Snipes?
Mr. Rudolph were here. I'll wait till he comes back, but I was going to ask him where the line is between someone using their personal Facebook page, for instance. What's the line between how much control we, as, say, an employer, could have over what an employee posts in their personal page as opposed to their rights to free speech? So that's kind of a question I would ask Mr. Rudolph. Otherwise, I'm in complete agreement that we need to have a policy.
Yeah, I'm sure Mr. Rudolph could comment on it, but I do know that this particular policy was drafted by our Labor Counsel, Mr. Yeager. This is basically his specialty. And I think this is sort of a very generic kind of policy, I think, that a lot of other communities have done. So I don't know, not to necessarily, Mr. Rudolph may be able to sort of address it, but he didn't specifically write this policy, so I just want to make sure that we're not asking him specifics on this.
Something I just thought of, where I know of one other rather large corporation, that if an employee or a member of the staff happens to be discussing something that isn't, I'll say, a priority, but if they're discussing it, their handbook says they have to include the statement, "This is my opinion, not the opinion of
That's
of the
in here,
company."
I believe that's in here. Yeah.
Okay, I read it. I'm sorry, I didn't see it. Okay.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, but they have to actually include it in anything they're sending.
Right.
So.
That's something for example, as a teacher, one of the things I have to send out is if I do any emails, I have to have a clause down the bottom that this is intended, obviously, for the use of the person who's supposed to get it. If it goes accidentally, disregard it. I mean, because.
So as you're changing history here.
Well, yeah, right. But if I'm talking about students, individual students, if I'm talking to a guidance counselor or emailing a parent about something with a student, I have to make sure if it goes somewhere it's not supposed to go. I mean, I could lose my job because of privacy laws. Mr. Rudolph, again, not to catch you off guard, because obviously you didn't write this policy, but are you familiar in terms of the social media with other communities, in terms, it's a pretty standard thing that they're going with nowadays?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Mr. Snipes had raised the issue of the line between sort of freedom of speech and obviously protecting, the interests of the township. It's a pretty lengthy policy. It's not something that's just a line or two, but obviously that's something that is factored in.
An ever-moving line.
Right. Mr. Dent's comments or questions?
Mr. Zupka brought up my issues, ever-changing, that we'd have to adjust this periodically as new formats, I guess you would call them, come out, and how people are communicating. I'm not really a Facebook person myself, so I don't use it, but it's just seems to be always something new that everyone's using.
Right. Right. Okay. And some of my questions have already been addressed. Comments or questions from the public? See no hands. Okay, then is there a motion to adopt the policy and have it entered into the employee handbook?
So moved.
Seconded.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay.
I just have one other item tonight. I have some announcements from the Park and Rec Department. They are continuing to accept Pinewood Pool membership applications, as well as summer camp registrations. The final Teen Advisory Panel meeting will be held on Monday, June 6th. They will be meeting at the Falls Township Municipal Complex parking lot at 5:30 p.m. They will proceed to a women's place to present them with a check in the amount of $437.77 for the Teen Pasta Dinner fundraiser. There will be no Teen Advisory Panel meetings during July and August. The next Teen Advisory meeting will be on Tuesday, September 6th. There will be an adult boating safety course on Saturday, June 11th. This will be held at the Falls Township Municipal Complex at room 202. Park and Rec is also accepting Pinewood Pool after-hours pool rentals. If anybody has any other questions regarding any Park and Rec matter, please call 215-949-9000, extension 220, 221, or 222. And that's all I have tonight, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. All right, board comment. Mr. Snipes, start us off.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just want to apologize for being late tonight. I came in about 7:15. I think I was stuck in some traffic coming from Philadelphia, so I apologize for that. I had a good day yesterday. I think we all had a good day yesterday, those of us who were at the polls. I think we might say that the voter turnout was 20%, maybe.
My poll was about 23, but I was told my poll was a little high.
Right.
So I don't know what the other ones were.
I think where I was about 20%. So I was actually impressed by that. On a rainy day and an off-year election, local elections, I was impressed that people came out. So I want to thank people that came out to vote, thank those who ran. It's not every time that either any one of us is pleased with the results. I personally was very pleased with the results yesterday. But beyond that, I think people behaved themselves very well. Sometimes there are problems at the polls. I didn't see any. So I think it was a good day. And I want to thank also people that volunteered to be at the polls and to help the voters. Mr. Kraus mentioned zoning around wind power, I think specifically. And there may be other issues around alternative energies. I think that's something that the board should look at. I know some communities have grappled over the issue of windmills and the impact on neighbors and sounds, and so it's something I think we should begin to look into as oil prices go high and as people begin to think about alternative energies. It's obviously going to affect us, so I'd like to see us take a look into that. And then finally, on some of the economic issues that were mentioned tonight, there is an excellent film out called Inside Job. I have not myself seen it yet, but other friends I've seen say it gives another perspective on what happened with Wall Street and the financial collapse in the country that might not be what you've read in the newspaper and might be willing to see. So might be worth seeing, so I'm going to myself see that. And that's it. Thank you for a good meeting, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Mr. Zipka?
Thank you. The very beginning of the meeting, the gentleman spoke about the USO, and that's something that's so far forgotten. Honestly, it wasn't exactly on the front of my mind until I read it on the agenda this evening. And many years ago, I actually did see Bob Hope, and I don't want to say I saw the Andrews sisters, but I did see the Andrews sisters. But that wasn't part of the USO. But it means so much to our armed forces people, and it's like giving them a remembrance of home. I had the opportunity a few years ago, actually, to have, well, I was asked to pick somebody up, and they were waiting in Terminal A in Philadelphia, and the facilities that they do have there are fantastic, and you can actually feel like you're coming into you're coming back, you're coming into home, and anything anybody can do, it's really a fine organization, and if you sit there and think about it. I'm glad it was thought of this evening, and we voted on it to contribute money to them. But it's forgotten, and we shouldn't be doing that. That's all I have this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dents.
I'm going to continue with what Mr. Zupka just said. It really is an amazing cause, and again, the barbecue, craft fair, car show this weekend. All the proceeds benefit the USO, the Liberty USO, right here in our own area. It's going to be a great event. Hopefully the weather holds out for us, but it is rain or shine. It's a free event, and there's literally something there for everybody. There's rides for the kids, like I said, the car show, a craft fair, the barbecue competition. There'll be food vendors there. The fire company's going to be down there cooking hamburgers and hot dogs. 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Saturday and noon till 5 on Sunday. Parking at Pennsbury East, right, Pete?
Yes, we're working
And a
on
bus service
temporary
back and forth, because it's going to be limited parking down there. Also, 2 issues tonight. The traffic calming, that was a huge issue when I ran for this position. That was one of the main concerns most people had, was people speeding, the traffic in neighborhoods. And I think it's a good first step is what we're doing here with the marking the streets, doing what we can, and it's probably the least expensive. A lot of people think they want stop signs, they want a stop sign, they want a speed bump. They don't realize the noise that's involved with that, which is something I was unaware of until we had that special meeting with Traffic Planning Design, when they came and explained to us how that's really not a solution. And also the building renovations that are much, much needed. That was another great first step in moving forward with that. And that's all I have for tonight.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Veslowski?
Yes. This was going to be a farewell speech, but things changed last night. I was terribly happy with every aspect of the election except my getting elected. And I had asked people in the newsletter not to vote for me. But I've got a lot of serious thinking to do. But I am running out of patience. I don't like the lying attacks. For example, I was out of the room discussing with those 3 young people who had a problem with being hired in our rec department. And so I wasn't in here for the paying of the bills. But each meeting, I ask to have the bills separated so that I can choose what I wish to pay for, what I wish to vote for, because I happen to be the one person on this board that brought that money in. I have consistently asked the other 4 board members to demonstrate what they did to bring a dime into this township, and there is no answer because they haven't brought anything in. But they are spending the money that I brought in, and I have no say on it. And they lump together every bill each month. And that forces me, if I vote yes, to vote on things I do not approve of. For example, the boat ramp. And if I then, months later or next year or sometime, point out where that boat ramp was a mistake and show how much it cost the people of Falls Township, then they would say, well, you voted for it. So you're between a rock and a hard place. I decide to take the abuse in that foul lie that they put out in their newsletter, their mailing, because all they had to do was separate the police payroll, the administrative staff payroll, anything at all. And to add insult to injury, they listed as one of my sins, besides not supporting the fire department, the police department, and all that. That is an outrageous lie. I support them with more heart than these big spenders do. So when they said that I even voted no on sending flowers to bereaved families, I want to point out how hollow and shallow that is. I had my sister Loretta die since I came on this board for the second time. I was elected in 2005. I took my oath of office in 2006. Loretta died, and then my brother John in Atlanta died, and then my sister Barbara in Western Pennsylvania died. And on Palm Sunday, my brother, who was a Catholic priest and ordained at the Vatican, died. And I never, ever even received a moment of silence for being bereaved. And I certainly didn't know about flowers because I never got any flowers, and I don't want any. I don't want our township money spent on flowers for me. But it's a blatant lie to say, and she won't even send flowers to people who have a death in their family. I didn't know they send flowers because it's all clumped in on their stupid list that they try to force me to vote for each time. And any time I vote for one of these extravagant projects, I leave myself open to not be allowed to criticize what they're doing that's wrong, or when those cost to keep these facilities open, like the boat ramp, for example, instead of soccer fields for the kids, then I would be told, you voted for it. What are you doing criticizing? And a new lie would spring from that other lie. Now, I'm going to let that go because that will all be dealt with in the books that I'm writing. I did write a partial farewell speech here because I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm 81 years old. My head still works fabulously, and anyone that wants to test me, I will be real glad to recite anything they want. I could do Shakespeare for weeks without repeating something. I can do the Bill of Rights, the Gettysburg Address, the Constitution of the United States. At my age, that's pretty good memory. I also remember the minutes that I have read and the irregularities that I have found. And there's no point in bringing them up at a meeting because we have people like Mrs. Snipes who comes here to the podium and screams at me and tells me I'm a lunatic. But it got edited out because the meeting got closed down. And I was asking about the Snipes holdings. And I will address those in due time. He runs next year. So I'm going to read the statement that I typed this afternoon. I retired as a district justice in 1994 after having served on the school board and as a Falls Township supervisor. My husband had died of leukemia, and I was lost without him. I purchased a home in Lower Makefield for $150,000 with insurance money. That year, my daughter Jan, who had been tax collector for 16 years, decided to run for district justice since I was leaving. She won on both tickets, just as I always had. Jan never had a political bone in her body. She hates politics. She helped me to fight for Lake Caroline, 3 arches, the golf course, the swimming pool, and all of the parkland in Fairless Hills. The golf course I mentioned. At 10 to 15 years of age, she knew all the issues as well as I did and handled all of the exhibits during the trial, which ended up in the Supreme Court when we sued for Lake Caroline Park. There were 4 other families that joined me in a class action suit. That's why that is in public holding. And I was told here at a meeting not long ago by our chairman that I don't like parks. I'm against parks. I began my public life 47 years ago fighting for that park. I was offered the community park for $1 from Waste Management, and I turned that down. I said, you know, we don't have the money to be doing what we need to do. So I got involved in negotiating the agreements that brought in $95 million in 1995. Alan Wilson is the man who helped me to do that. And in the year 2001, there was another expansion. Alan Wilson helped me to do that. And then these fellows took control, and they hired a fellow named Kupperman, and they gave Mr. Clark, our erstwhile solicitor who's absent tonight, they gave him $50,000, and they gave Kupperman $150,000, and they laundered that through Waste Management. They made Waste Management write the check so it would deflate what's happening in solicitors' fees. And all those monkey shines go on, and I have documented those. My books are going to be fun to write if I have records left after the tornado hit my home in Florida, ripped the roof off, landed in the cul-de-sac, and I had to pay someone like long distance to cut it up because people couldn't even get out of their driveways. And I wasn't vacationing in Florida. While I was down there, I began with the flu. I had 2 heart attacks, and I had an injury from a strong wind that blew me against 3 concrete steps, and I had 34 stitches in my head. So, you know, I was not enjoying myself as the newspaper reported and as the lying politicians would have the public believe. Now, the politicians had well, you know that all the properties that I sued for are in public ownership, and Jan handled all those exhibits at age 15 when we were in court suing for all those facilities. The politicians hated me, as they do now. They can't stand idealists and people who are looking to help others rather than to feather their own nest and use public money to do that. I could have run for higher office many times. I had no desire to do that. In fact, my last time on a ballot was to go right back where I started, to the school board, where I began in 1971. I began my public life in 1965. My health is failing. I have very poor eyesight. I worry when I'm out at these meetings at night. I can't go to the DARE meetings because they belong in different places. I can find my way home from this building in the dark. Once I erred, and it scared the heck out of me, and I'll write about that. But it is a chore when you're 81 years old and your head works perfectly, but your body isn't cooperating. I mentioned my health is failing. The corrupt Democratic Club has tried to smear me and scare me for all of those 47 years. They conspired to accuse me of a slander against someone I never knew. I had to sue the attorney who represented me for not having federal marshals pick up the 4 subpoenaed witnesses who did not come to the trial. We settled out of court, and I signed a confidentiality agreement not to tell what they had to pay me. But I noticed that didn't come up this time, because they knew darn right well I would sue them if they put that in that corrupt Democratic Club literature, and I'm a registered Democrat. I'm just ashamed of those Democrats who lie and cheat and steal. I sued to get the mud scrubbed off of the Wisławski name. I didn't want the money. A good name is the most precious thing I can leave my only 2 grandsons, one of whom is autistic. I taught my son this poem when he was a tiny kid, and it refers to our last name, Wisławski. You got it from your father. It was all he had to give, and it's yours to use and cherish for as long as you may live. You could lose the watch he gave you. That can always be replaced. But a black mark on your name, son, can never be erased. So be sure to guard it wisely after all is said and done. You'll be glad that name is spotless when you give it to your son. And my Johnny gave that name to his son, who is a brilliant young boy that the doctors wanted to abort when he was in the womb at 5 months. They said he would be nothing but a vegetable. Well, that boy is in the United Kingdom. He's a varsity letterman in every sport he tried. He makes A+ in Chinese in high school, and he made A's in his other subjects. He was recruited by the CIA, the State Department, the FBI, and the Secret Service. And it is the State Department who sent him to China this past summer, the day after he got his high school diploma. And John Michael is certainly not a vegetable. He is a pretty wonderful young man. And whenever they were putting pressure on John and Michelle to kill that baby, my son said, "We will take whatever God sends us." He knew that his mother and father had buried 2 of his siblings. I lost a son and a daughter. And I don't like being picked on, and I've run out of patience with these thieves and liars who do such dreadful things to me, damage my property and everything else. So I sued to get the mud scrubbed off the Wisławski name, not for money. A good name's the most precious thing I can leave my only 2 grandsons. One of my books will tell how my children paid the price for my involvement all these years. It gave them strength of character. Jan once said to me, "Mother, I'm tired of living in your shadow." She wanted to be Jan Wisławski, not known as Dorothy's daughter. And that was certainly a reasonable thing for her to wish for. Last night, Jan won the highest number of votes in this township. I haven't seen them all, but she got over 3,000 votes, and I didn't see anything as high as hers, and certainly nothing higher. But she retained her seat as the judge in this municipality, and you have a fair and honest court because we Wisławskis can't be bribed, bought off, or scared off, and we don't fix tickets. I did not endorse her on my ballot. I am her mother who loves her, and I did not put Jan Wisławski on my ballot. I knew the taxpayers loved her and respected her enough to vote for her, even if she wasn't on my ballot. She was supposed to be on the Democratic goldenrod ballot, but these Falls Township Democrats removed her name from that ballot, and that made me angry because she deserved to be there. She was a non-political Democrat running cross-filed, but her name was deleted. So I called John Cordisco, the Democratic County Chairman. He called me back and said he had ordered the corrupt Falls Township Democrats to reprint that county ballot at their own expense and to include Jan Veslowski's name. And I laughed because I did not believe Mr. Cordisco. And yesterday I had someone doing poll hopping at every precinct and gathering all of the ballots that were being passed out, and Jan Veslowski's name was not on any of them. So much for John Cordisco's word of honor. I said, you don't expect that vicious bunch to listen to you, do you, John? And he assured me that he had control over people like the de Blasios, Harvey, Snipes, and the Gouldings, and all of the others who have lied about me over the years. My final word to him was, she will win in spite of all of you. She is a Veslowski, and our name is clean. They were so desperate to find some dirt on me, they went to my hometown in western Pennsylvania to find something to discredit me. They came back empty-handed. I never even had a traffic ticket. My books will deal with the major truckload of lies they told in this election. They also had a bigger truckload of money for signs and other mailings to steal your vote. You know, if I had all the money that was spent on those political signs, I could have fed all the hungry people in Appalachia or somewhere else. I would never have allowed it to be spent on politics. The only thing I ever spend is on the Veslowski newsletter. The pay-to-play guys contributed, I'm sure, to all those signs. The voters who stayed home gave away the store. Jan ran her own campaign. I think it was innovative. I was in Florida. And she invited people to come to the Fairless Hills Fire Hall to sign her petitions. I thought that was brilliant. You know, it saved her going and knocking on doors. They all came down. She had a disc jockey and served little snacks and things. Anyhow, I said I was in Florida with a heart attack when that occurred in February. At that time, but I chuckled when I learned what she had done. It was Jan's idea, not mine. I learned about it weeks later. It also proves that after all the smears and lies and vandalism and torture to her mother, the Veslowski name is scrubbed as clean as it ever was. There is one difference. I am now living in Jan's shadow. She has proven to me that she is an individual in her own right. Last night, my mind flashed back to when she was 5 years old. She wanted to cross Trenton Road, which was the house Daddy and I bought when we first got married. I still own it. We paid $11,150. I was required to recite all the properties I own as if I had done something to steal them. That was a demeaning thing to happen at a public meeting, but I did it. And I even indicated that I owned cemetery lots and paid for them. Those cost me $7.50 each for 8 lots. We lived on the busy highway that is Trenton and Olds, and Jan's little girlfriend lived across the street. I told her she could not cross because it was too dangerous. She was a perfect little girl and never defied her dad or me. Yet she said, "Mommy, I am an Indian-vigible." Well, Indian-vigible was her way of pronouncing individual. All her life, she wanted to be an individual. Last night, she proved she's independent. There can be no doubt that she functions without me. I knew that if I didn't endorse her, she would still win. Anyhow, that is the rest of that story. I'm extraordinarily proud of my daughter. She's loved by the taxpayers and has earned their respect. As I wind down my public light, I salute Jan. I'm indeed living in her shadow, and it feels pretty good. I'm bursting with pride, and I salute her publicly. I had asked the taxpayers not to vote for me. They did anyhow, and I find myself on the November ballot with a serious decision that I'm forced to make. When the tornado ripped that roof off my mobile home in Florida on March 31st, I have no idea what files are left. I doubt another newsletter is possible. I will consult my friends, and I'm sure the good Lord will guide me. Don't ever change, Jan. You're perfect as you are. And that's my tribute to the daughter who paid the price for being my daughter, because she gets abused just as I do, but not to the degree that I take it. And that's my public comment. I have a lot more to say at another time.
Okay, thank you. I want to mention a couple things about coming up. Mr. Snipes earlier mentioned the Fallsington Library has gone through a complete renovation. As I said, it was my wife and I have taken our kids there ever since we moved into the area. It's a great little library, and it is one of the things that was brought to my attention by a lot of the people that were there was some confusion that some people have about the library itself. It is an independent library. It's been in existence, the company itself has been in existence since Thomas Jefferson was president, and I'm not exaggerating, literally. The building they're in was built in the just after the Civil War, 1870s, I believe, and so obviously it was in need of maintenance. There's been maintenance in the meantime, but it needed a lot of work, and they got it and they needed it. As I said, every member of this board was in support of that. But they are an independent library. They are affiliated with the county. And so if you want a specific book, if you want some kind of a movie or something like that, and they don't have it, they can get it brought to them by the Bucks County Free Library System. And usually you put in fill out a slip of what exactly you want. They send away for it, and then they give you a call when it comes in a couple days. And then when you return it, you can just return it back there. So it's obviously very convenient. But a lot of people tend to think that because it's connected in that way to the county system, that they also get county money, which is not true. And so they do rely on donations from individuals. They rely on people to come and help them out, and they are embarking on sort of a fundraising activity, being a friend of the Fallsington Library, which you can check out if you go there. It's I think a relatively small fee yearly, and I think there's even I think the lifetime membership is $100 or something like that, and what it entitles you to various kind of discounts at different places. They're trying to figure out ways to collect some money and get more people involved. So if you get a chance to go down to the library, see where the money went. It's a very good use of funds and efforts here, and it's a great library. So I'd encourage you to go down there. Another great event, which is going to be passing right by the library, the Memorial Day Parade. I mentioned earlier this evening, at the beginning of our meeting, the passing of Nevin Rovenalt, who planned that parade for years and years and years. And so it will be sort of a somber occasion with him not there. But it is going to be, I think it's the 29th. It's a Sunday, Memorial Day weekend. And it leaves from Pennsbury High School, goes down New Falls Road, and finishes up at the Memorial Park right in Fallsington there. So it's always a great parade to be in. The weather's always, knock wood, the weather's always great. And it's a good way to come out, and we remember Memorial Day weekend, and we think of it sort of the unofficial beginning of summer, but it's also an occasion to remember those people who paid the ultimate sacrifice so that we could be sitting up here and voting, as many of us did yesterday, or sitting out here speaking our minds, as we heard a lot of people do tonight. Let's see, other issues. I was talking with Mr. Gray about the open space plan, which our committee, Open Space Committee, put together. There is a listing of properties that they have recommended, and one of the things I've been asking, I know Mr. Gray's working on, it's not going to be necessarily that easy, so I don't expect it overnight, but a lot of times they give us the list of properties that are available for purchase through the county open space money, which we have, about $900,000 to spend to maintain some properties and maybe help, maybe expand the park system, something like that, anything that the board wants to do. But usually it's just a list of properties and an address, maybe who owns it. And so I have asked Mr. Gray to transfer that onto a map of the township so that we can get a decent idea of where exactly of what we're looking at, the size of the properties and where they are. And so we'll look forward to getting that hopefully pretty soon. And with that information, we can make some decisions about, if we want to, how we want to spend that money. Let's see. So. Another issue I want to bring up to the board's attention, there is a zoning matter that's going to be coming up at the next zoning meeting regarding a property, a business called Burns, which is looking to put a facility, basically a mulching facility, on the corner of Mill Creek and Bristol Pike, all right? Pretty close to some residences. There are a lot of residents who are very upset about this and are our fire marshal also has serious concerns about this operation going in an area that's heavily residential. And I would ask the board that we permit our solicitor to go and state our opposition to this proposed, I think they're asking for a zoning change, or they're asking for a lot of variances to the zoning so that they can operate basically a mulching facility there. So I'm asking board members if you'd be in favor of asking our solicitor to go and oppose this particular application. Yeah.
I was at the last zoning meeting, yes.
Okay. All right. You need a motion for that, or?
Yes.
Okay, so Mr.
I'll make the motion.
Okay. All right, make a motion to oppose. Mr. Zupko, you want a second?
Second it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right. Let's see. Finally, just a couple of issues, clarifications, we'll say, regarding the bill list that the township looks at every month. The bill list is usually a good amount of pages.
Mr. Chairman.
In this case, yes, sir. Oh.
There were two properties. There was Geis and Peruzzi was the second.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot about the Peruzzi one. All right. Yeah, there's a property, Peruzzi property, which is actually very close to this building, that when it was bought by Peruzzi, there was an understanding with the Planning Commission that it would not be used as a standalone used car lot. Mr. Peruzzi, I believe, is putting in an application that would sort of lean to look like that's what he's actually creating. And so I know we had the chairman of the Planning Commission here this evening earlier, and I've talked to a Planning Commission member who's very, very upset at what he sees as maybe circumventing what the Planning Commission was had worked out with them. And so I'd also ask that we ask our solicitor to go and make sure that that application is also opposed if he's looking to do what he told the Planning Commission he wouldn't do. If he's looking to do that, then that's something we want to oppose. We need to stand by our people that make agreements. So is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Yeah.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay. Getting back to the bill list issue, this bill list, there's one more? That's it, it's two. Gillespie was, they fixed that. Yeah. This bill list, 37 pages. It is very detailed. It has, and this is no different than any others, individual vendors, the description of what the money's going for, the amount of the transaction, the fund of where the money's coming from, as well as some summary pages that show where the money's coming from. So there's a tremendous amount of detail in the bill lists, and it's every month like that, and it's been like that since before I came on board. Mr. Snipes mentioned poll workers earlier, and I want to talk about the people who volunteer at the polls, and I'm not sure if you meant the people outside or inside. I wasn't sure what you were referring to, because I was thinking of the people inside.
Yes.
Okay, all right, which I figured you would. It is sort of it's a long day for those people that work inside the polls, and they're oftentimes your neighbors, and it's often a thankless job. You're pretty much trapped, in that room for about 14 hours, probably, maybe sometimes 15, depending on, you get there early, you set up, and you stay late to do counts, and et cetera, et cetera. A lot of pressure, especially you have new machines and people that don't understand what's going on sometimes with the machines, that they haven't used them, and things can go wrong. I know at my poll there was a little bit of an issue with the machine, but it was solved. It ended up not being a big deal. But they don't get paid a whole lot, those people. I mean, I think it's $90 a day or something like that. It's $95 a day or something. Not a lot of money to sort of be there all the time and deal with all that, staying in that one spot all day long. So they usually get forgotten about. We thank the people to come out and vote, and we talk about the candidates and everything else, but we don't often talk about the people that actually allow us to do it, who run the machines, check the names, and they're the actual gears in the process that make it happen. So I want to thank them. And with regards to Mrs. Vislowski's daughter, Jan Vislowski, one of the people who did sign her ballot or her petition to run for district justice was myself. Actually, my wife signed as well. I have a lot of respect for our district justice, Jan Vislowski. She came to my door, knocked on my door, and I was, happy to sign that. And I was also happy to hand out goldenrod ballots that did have her name on them. In fact, she, has them. So whatever copies, there were copies later in the day that did not have her name, simply because we had run out of the ones that did, and more voters came out than we thought. and so we had to resort to ones that didn't necessarily have her name on it. She was unopposed, and so that was one of the thinking, was that we knew that she was going to win, and in fact the Democratic Party endorsed her because of that and the work that she's done. So I have a lot of respect for her, and was proud that she won. Congratulate her. So with that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.